Okay, let's see how long it takes to play the music. See how it's taking long? Huh? Like 3 seconds. Woo, we're here. Happy, what is it, Wednesday? It's Survivor night tonight.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Yeah.
And Lib is here too. What was it? Chris and I were just talking, Lib. Hang on one second.
Yeah.
About, I didn't really want to talk about this because I haven't been following the story at all, but the self-immolation guy. And the only thing we want to talk about is, I've noticed.
If you say his Twitter page, I'm going to.
Chris said he was like super woke, and so that's the only.
Sure. Yeah.
Because he's one of your people, I was just interested in your take on it. That's all.
One of my people. Wow, that's. I'm an individual, Jeff. Okay.
That's one of the things we were talking about is how they claim the left and identify with it in some circumstances, and they distance themselves in others, and all of a sudden they're not extreme left.
I said the same thing. I said that you're an independent thinker, though. I don't think your opinions are formed by groupthink like people like people that I consider super woke to be. They tend to be more groupthink oriented, but I consider you
to my knowledge, to my understanding, the guy who did the self-immolation, while I guess you could argue that we were politically aligned, he hated all the people that I liked.
Vosh, he wasn't a Voshite.
Oh no, it's like it's further than that. I mean, yes, that's true, but like I expect that. It goes like further. He likes people that I think are disgusting, like a lot of black supremacists.
Wasn't he a little white kid?
Yeah. Have you?
Well, I don't know. He's little, but he looked fairly tall. I think.
So he's that caught up in.
Well, for what it's worth, I do think that there are a lot of disingenuous black supremacists that try and sort of sneak into sort of left circles and try and use how some people will use therapy language as a part of their abuse tactics,
neuro-linguistic programming, like Talcott gets accused of.
Oh yes, yeah. That. Sorry, I had to think about that for a second. I'm like, what the fuck is that? And I'm like, oh wait, no, I know what that is. Okay, yeah. People like Professor Flowers, who was a lady who didn't want to say that genocide is bad, because then she would.
Now she's different than Professor Gay.
I don't know who Professor Gay is.
She was the one that got fired from, was it Harvard?
She was the dean of Harvard, something like that.
Yeah. She got fired for some.
She was one of those, one of the ones that testified.
She got fired for plagiarism. Plagiarism.
Well, yeah, but that's functionally different than being. I mean, first off, Professor Flowers isn't a professor.
I'm just trying to keep up Flowers and Gay.
Yeah. Oh. No. She's Flowers. She's just an online personality. To my knowledge, Professor Gay was a fine, normal professor.
To your mind, she was the plagiarist one?
Yeah. Aside from the plagiarism.
We just have different ideas.
I'm saying aside from the plagiarism.
No, I'm not aside from plagiarism.
I'm not saying I think plagiarism's bad, but I'm saying aside from the plagiarism, she was like a normal person.
I don't know. I only the first day I met her, and really the only day I met her, was on Congress when she testified that day, and she did not seem like a normal, ordinary person to me at all. The stuff coming out of her mouth.
But anyway, but Professor Flowers, you're talking about
she went viral. She was so.
Isn't Professor Flowers? Isn't that one of the people that it's associated with the Vosh and kind of in that whole community?
Speaking of all, that's another take I want to get to.
Making Vosh's conversation with her basically propelled her into,
Right. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, that's the best I could remember. I remember because I've heard Destiny talk about her and stuff like that, so I knew that it was yeah. Go on.
What is your The horse story, Vosh.
The horse story.
Yeah.
It's not so much a horse story.
But you know what I'm talking about, right? What's your reaction to that?
The fact that he's a furry, or the fact that
not the furry part. Come on, you know what everybody was
okay,
talking
because
about.
You're saying
went viral.
Well, okay, but like you're saying, like, oh, it's the horse thing, and what you're talking about is not the horse.
Yeah, the whole issue, like, I'm trying to get. I haven't talked to you in a while about this kind of stuff, so I'm just trying to catch up on your reactions because you're one of the few people that listen to Vosh that I know that I talk to. That's all.
So one of the big things is that if you weren't aware of what the controversy was, he had some images on a folder that he popped up, and they were pornographic, and so he closed the stream down and restarted the stream. However, some people who saw those pictures were like, hey, the artist who did these pictures does a bunch of lolly stuff, and like does like a bunch of lolly art. That was the controversy. And then also there were some
wanting to be a horse.
That's not a controversy. That's just something, a joke.
I mean, it's to me it's kink. Like if that's his kink fantasy, whatever.
I mean, sort of. It's mostly like most of it's like a joke, but like also he's sort of a furry, so it's also not a joke. But yeah, the other thing he got criticized for was there were a few pictures in there that were allegedly AI art, which he did, which is very funny. I don't know. This is just like one of those things where like this is honestly the most nothing burger Vosh controversy I've ever heard. Like Vosh has had much worse controversies.
Yeah, I was more not upset because I didn't have anything invested in him to begin with, but more I guess I reacted more strongly to his comparing people on the right to the KKK during his debate with Piavio. Like that bothered me way more than whatever was in his little hard drive.
Sure, that's not a controversy though. That's just him doing debate bro shit.
Yeah, sure.
Which is actually similarly Chopper Jeff. The position on legalizing child porn. First off, he didn't take that position. However, in a argument, while arguing that benefiting from child labor is unethical, he was comparing child labor and child porn because they are comparable.
I trust Steve tends to be right. Like
Steve, Steve, I would encourage you to watch. Vosh recently did a video, I think called The Context. It's like an hour and 40 something minutes, but it goes through. It goes through a number of the recent controversies. Again, if he's on video condoning and supporting CP, please on my Discord, DM me the link. I'm absolutely open to having my mind shifted on this, but I have watched Vosh for quite a while. I've watched I've seen a lot of the alleged accusations that he's on video condoning and supporting CP, and it's not. So
I'm sorry, I even though there have definitely been cases of people that are in the fascist wing being on the left. I cannot say that is true at all.
Imagine being like an adult and being like, the Nazis are left wing.
Wasn't it the Socialist Party though? I've heard that.
Well, sure, but also they killed socialists. That was like the first thing they did was kill socialists within their party.
I don't think I'm on your Discord, Aleb. I don't think you've ever invited me. My feelings are hurt.
Oh no! I mean, like, if Steve is in the Discord, I have my DMs are open. He can DM.
I'm joking, man. I'm joking. Don't worry.
Words have the meaning that we give them. Like cooperatively among us. My words would have no meaning at all in some other country.
Yeah. Well, they would if you were speaking in a language that the people understood and was like coherent to them, and you understood like the context and stuff like that of how they use language. But yeah, words don't inherently have meaning. It's all context dependent on society. However, it is objectively true that the Nazis, the Nazi Party, did one of its first things once it gained a lot of traction was they purged the actual socialist elements of their party. That's the whole thing. There was the whole, what is it? Night of the Long Knives, I think, was the one where they killed a bunch of the socialists in their party. They killed like that. They had actual socialists in their party, and they killed a bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're barely 10 minutes in, and we've done child porn, Nazis. Mm-hmm. What else can we throw in and say
the only I'll just get back to the Vosh thing. The only clip I've seen of him that actually I think is damning, and I've seen the long form version of the clip, like the way he said before it and what he said after it, was whenever he was going on the rant about how he was saying, like, you cannot tell me that there has never been a situation where a sexual relationship between a child and an adult wasn't a positive thing for both the child and the adult, or something like that. Something that
Andrew Wilson did a whole episode, and he clipped all of that into one episode, and I think I saw it on that. He had several. It wasn't just that one.
I've watched that old conversation.
And they were. I was just the Vosh content alone. Like, leave Andrew's commentary aside. I was disgusted with what was coming out of his mouth.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
that's the only thing. That's the only thing
he has come out and said that he does not believe that.
Well, he said it.
Then why did he say it then?
Well, no, he doesn't believe it now. That's the.
He did.
Well, how convenient. Okay, well, but he did say it.
Well, okay, I'm sorry. Are people not allowed to change their opinions?
No, that's fine.
Jeff?
Yeah, and I'm allowed to be suspicious of that change.
Oh no, you are.
Circumstances like this.
You are, yeah.
But I don't like Vosh either way.
No, I know you don't. I'm just saying.
I didn't. And my roommate is a huge Vosh fan. The first time I saw him was the debate with P.F. Jung, and that's what even made me. That's what put P.F. Jung on my radar in the first place. Was watching him make so much sense in the face of all of this outrageousness that Vosh was trying to tie Republicans to KKK.
I think he didn't.
You could tell his antipathy for the right and the Republicans was. You could tell it was motivated reasoning and emotional reasoning.
What do you mean motivated emotional? Well, you can have motivated reasoning that's not emotional, right?
Both.
But you think it was both? Okay.
Yeah.
You think it was motivated by his emotions? Yes.
Well, it was so distorted by, and the other impression I had by it is, in fact, I'll try to find the link. Is he doesn't interact with any actual Republicans. This was all the cartoon social media version of a Republican.
Steve, that's not. Most famously, he argued that he sees no moral problem with people owning CP. No, that's literally.
I will find
not. He sees no moral. He says. Is in part of an argument that he sees no difference between people owning CP and people benefiting from child labor, which he has now come out. I'm aware he has now come out and said that he believes that argument doesn't actually hold the weight that he thought it did. That the levels of abstraction between the making of CP and benefiting from child labor more broadly are the latter is more abstract, and thus the two are not comparable.
Yeah. Well, anyway. That's the only thing.
And even then, even if he didn't, I would still just disagree with him on that.
Which is fine. I mean, like, I used to watch Vosh stuff.
For what it's worth, he didn't change his position because he got all the backlash. He got all the backlash, and then over time has changed his position. I am willing to say that because I have watched Vosh for a number of years, so I've literally seen him change his position on these things over time. So I mean, yeah, like you're free to not believe me. I mean, I am, as I have mentioned, biased when it comes to this, but given that I'm the person, at least on this panel, that actively watches Vosh, how is that different? Everything happens over time.
Well,
yeah,
I've seen
like
Vosh
it happened
too,
in like a normal way, you know, like over time, over a long period of time and reflection, and going back to the conversations and talking about them, and talking with other people. He seems to have had a genuine, like his position genuinely changed.
Okay.
Which again, yeah, like I'm biased. Absolutely. So
okay. Well, I just wanted to get your take on those two issues. I didn't want to make the whole stream Vosh today, but thank you for that. But I did have, actually, I have a bunch of tweets. They've been piling up, but there was one I wanted to particularly share with you. Here it is.
Sure.
Let me get it up. Well, iFi, go find another AI and see what it says. Ask ChatGPT.
I mean, alternatively, use Wikipedia. That might also be a good, decent source.
Sure. These are two columns. The left column is liberal social justice and woke, so critical social justice.
Sure. Pro free speech.
One is yes, exactly. And the free speech, because it's an issue so close. That's what put the woke on my radar first. Is I started noticing people's principles around speech being handled differently than I was used to in America, and so that's the one that first caught my attention as a very stark difference, that there was this other political grouping that was so opposite on the principle of free speech.
So I think, broadly speaking, I mean, I don't, I guess, disagree necessarily with too much of this, other than where it says treating people as individuals, treating people as monolithic groups. I don't think that...
Oh, that's another one of my big criticisms. Is they privilege the group over the individual instead of the relationship I'm used to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to know when we need to look at individuals and when we need to look.
When do we need to look at groups? If you're not in some job where you have to like analyze statistics and policy and all that.
I mean, when you're looking at sociology,
when does the ordinary American have to look at groups?
I mean, when you're looking, well, first off, the ordinary American
that are not like freely chosen and that like they affiliate like a church or something. Or religion.
Well, when you're looking at like sociological issues, you do oftentimes actually explicitly.
But when does the average American need to look at that? Like,
I mean, I think the average American does care about.
Why do we need to be in the mindset of prioritizing group identity over individual? Why is that important?
Well, it's not about prioritizing
past superficial characteristics to the individual.
You're using a lot of very loaded language. I don't think that it's about prioritizing the group over the individual. I think it's about understanding that there are certain contexts in which looking at people as individuals
I'm asking what those contexts are for the ordinary, average, non-academic American.
Yeah, sociological issues. And the average American cares actually quite a bit about sociological issues.
Okay, can you give me one?
Yeah, the trans issue.
Okay. So we should look at trans people as group avatars and not individual trans people, which is opposite from what Buck Angel said when he was on here.
Well, no, I think that there are times where you need to look at...
Give me an example of a situation where it would be more appropriate to treat someone as a monolithic group instead of an individual.
So when you want to talk about the trans suicide rate, if you were to look at, say, for instance, the trans people specifically as individual, when you're thinking about the trans suicide rate, you'd look at, oh, hey, there's not very many trans people who commit suicide every year. So it's not
Liv, pay attention to the important part of my question. The average American.
Yeah.
Me, you, your grandma sitting at the dinner table. Those people, the person
these are issues
Amazon.
that the average American cares about.
But you're talking about like analyze the statistical. They're not going to sit down and do that. When do they have to see an American?
No, they do it. They just do it poorly
rather than an individual.
No, they do it. They just do it poorly.
Well, I mean, I got a great example for that, Jeff.
Welcome, Steve. Do what?
Hey, well, a really good example of that is you can take a group of people like men, and you can ask the question, how many of them commit suicide, right? And that's associated with the group, but you also have multiple tiers down from there that require us to ask more questions. So the sociological perspective is and the group perspective is only the entry point to the catalyst of the rest of the conversation.
But when because the way the treat phrased it is seeing people as monolithic groups or something, and Lib is making the case that there are certain times in context, like we as Americans, I guess there's like two modes. There's individual over group and group over individual, and sometimes it's appropriate for Americans to learn how to shift to a group over individual mode and see individuals as part of monolithic groups. And I'm trying to understand an example where the average American on the street would need to do that, and he brought up the trans issue.
Well, yeah, because these are issues that Americans care about.
So you can say that.
But then he went into charts and analyzing suicide rates, which took it away from the example I was.
I never use charts. I'm talking
about Lib
stuff like that. Yeah, I know. I'm saying to get to the core of what someone believes, you have to ask them what they believe, right? So you can say, all right, so men are disproportionately represented in suicide numbers, right? So men commit suicide 3 out of 4 times. You can guarantee that that's a man, right? Yeah. But then you have to you can say from that men need help. That's a rational thing to say. But after that, the next question that you have to ask is why, and what are the predictors for that? And it can be multiple things. So the group context really is only to give us a push off ground to say, okay, well, what's next? But
that's like an initial screening, but it's not the ultimate landing
point. My whole point was that I think that sometimes when people talk about treating people as individuals, what they mean is they never want to talk about larger social groups, and I think that's
I don't get that meaning out of treating people like individuals.
I get that meaning because I've talked to those kinds of people. Like I've talked to a number of those kinds of people who don't want to have that discussion on that level, because if they do, there's a number of reasons why I think. Obviously, they don't ever say those reasons, but I have a number of reasons.
Well, then how do you know them? You have like Miss Cleo powers or something? If they don't say them, but you somehow know their reasons, how are you?
Well, because I've usually these are people who I know or I've talked to multiple times, so I have. I can.
You're inferring or speculating about their reason, but they haven't actually articulated a reason to you.
Well, sure, but that's how most things work.
Right, but just like Steve said, like that initial like group level analysis is just the starting point. I think that initial what you just described is a starting point as well.
My inference isn't based off of I'm not saying I infer this based off of people that I've met and talked to one time for 10 minutes. Some of the people that I've talked to about this are people that I've known my entire life.
Let's just be clear about one thing. Sociology,
about assuming their motivations without them having.
Well, there's no way you could. There's no way you possibly could convince me that we can predict the motivations of large groups of people given a very broad, narrow, shallow representation, such as men are committing suicide, and this is the reason why. You can't do that. It's functionally, not only is it unethical, but it's unscientific.
Well,
so, yeah, the study of sociology is the study of groups, right?
Yes.
But then you have to take it a step further and actually investigate the reasons why those people do the things they do in a multivariate sample.
Yeah, and that becomes a lot more complicated.
Absolutely. But the problem that I think Lib is speaking to, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but is that people tend to take a group and say, well, this group does this, instead of asking further questions. and they just make judgments off of those presumed predictions that they can take from that. So you can say, well, men are victims of suicide more frequently. That means they must be mentally ill, all of them, right? And that's not the perspective that should be taken. Would that be an accurate and fair representation of what you're trying to say, Lib?
A little bit. I mean, I'm more getting at, I think there is a undercurrent that I've noticed of people who take issue with looking at groups, and I don't understand fully why there are a lot of people who will get to the point where like they will view any like sociology as like junk, right? Like, because sociology relies on looking at like broad statistics and stuff like that. That's sort of what I'm pushing back against. Is there are definitely people who take the opposite, take the extreme of looking at people as individuals, as in they don't want to look at people as groups, even though I would argue
I'm one of those people.
Okay, yeah, I think that's wrong. I think looking at people as groups is a Wait, you think sociology is the entire field of sociology is bunk?
No, I'm talking about, well, possibly, but I'm talking about what you just said about people are at the extreme individual end where they don't want to or can't or refuse to see people as group. And I said I'm pretty much one of those people. There's almost never a situation where somebody's group characteristic becomes more important than them as a person, more important than their actions, their character, their beliefs, their personality, how they treat it, etc.
Sure. But you're saying there's no purpose into looking at people as a group. So like, for instance, saying,
well, kind of like what Steve said, like I'm up here in Seattle, like way away from my culture. So when I meet another Southerner up here, I right away like make assumptions about them, like, oh, that is a member of the group Southerner, and that has meaning to me, and I'm gonna talk to this person, try to make a connection based on the set of assumptions about them. So, but it's a very initial, like, just first test to like see if that connection is worth pursuing. Same with men and women. Like if I'm in a group of people, I'm going to gravitate toward the men and try to talk to and make connections with the men simply because they're male. But that's just an initial little heuristic I use to filter, because I can't interact with every single person at all.
Yeah, that's my point, is that everyone uses these groups in their day-to-day life, but like you can't not.
Right, but I don't. People try to problematize that, and I don't see the problem in it. But it happens so quickly, and it's so initial, and it gets replaced so quickly by some other more complex level of analysis.
I don't
see the point of lingering at that initial level for the average person.
Well, sometimes there is. So, for instance, say the suicide rate of men. Say,
yeah, that's a question I had for Steve. If like, and I work in men's mental health, so knowing that about men. Should every man I approach, should I assume they're a potential suicide risk just because they fall into the category of male? Or should I wait for more information? Like treat them like I would anybody else until more information comes in?
I don't think it needs to be either or. I think you can take a number, and this is where sociology is actually really beneficial, is you can look at that number and you can say every single one of those people that you meet that are male are at risk. Because the number's so freaking high, but you don't treat them any different, but you pay attention, to any warning signs that may approach or might exhibit themselves openly, but you don't treat them any differently. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, the issue that I have with some conservatives like Ben Shapiro is they'll say, well, 50% of the crime is, or I mean, half of all murders are committed by, half of all. How did he put that? It was 50% of those in prison who have committed crimes, and like specifically gun deaths, has been black. Well, it's like, well, what am I supposed to take from that, dude?
Yeah, I mean,
are you insinuating that 50% of the black population are criminals? I mean, that's blatantly fucking wrong. So this is where when you.
But you gotta realize Ben Shapiro is on the Daily Wire. So,
well, that's why I'm using the
what does that disqualify his automatically?
Well, no.
Isn't that a logical fallacy?
I'm saying his audience is disproportionately conservative and broadly like right wing, and broadly conservatives will oftentimes view Black people as being more likely to be criminals.
So the best way I can explain this is by a fallacy.
I mean, I'm just going off.
I want to hear.
I'm just going off of the individuals that I've met. So
okay, well,
I'm not even talking about.
They're representative of the majority of Republicans. Go ahead, Steve.
So you can use this simple fallacy to understand how nefarious this behavior is, which is the compositional divisional fallacy. And what that says is you can't take a component of something and assume that it represents the whole. That's the divisional portion of it. And the compositional part is you cannot assume of the individual components the larger representation of the group. So you can't say, well, this group, i.e. Republicans, we'll use that as an example, all Republicans are homophobic. You know that that's not true, right? So you're right there, you're identifying the compositional problem. Now you could say, well, all gay people are this, like they're for whatever, right? Well, that's not true because not all are for that. So that's where the problem that I have with people that use group identity studies such like this, and then they weaponize that to try and assume, or at least try to convince more people that because this number is true, that must represent the group. And that is fundamentally a flawed, unscientific perspective and idea to hold. You can't do that. It just gives us a jumping ground to go off of.
Yeah. If I'm understanding your question, MoOse, I think statistics is kind of a rough starting point, but you have to go deep.
You have to go deeper.
You have to go to something more individual and concrete than
it's also important to understand the context behind statistics, because for instance 1350 is a statistic, but if you can be led to incorrect assumptions based off of just 1350 the statistic if you don't know anything else.
I think it was Mark Twain who said there's lies, damned lies, and statistics.
Yeah.
You know, and I rarely use statistics as, you know, this kind of catch-all gotcha. Usually I go much deeper. Once I list a statistic, then I go further. But when I'm trying to investigate someone's belief system or why they believe a certain way, I almost never use statistics.
Yeah,
I can do the same thing that my intention on using the statistic is. I can do the same thing just by asking them more questions. You know, Socrates said, "The gods gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should be listening more than speaking." So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the generalizations that I have a problem with, because why do you have to generalize when you have something more concrete right there in front of you? Like you already able to go to the individual level.
I mean, for partly for the same reason that you said, you know, when you see someone who, you know, they're from, like, you see they have a license plate from the South, right? You make assumptions about them. That is a human thing. That is, humans do that. We recognize patterns.
It's tribal. I get excited because it's like, oh, another person from my tribe is up here. It's that tribal instinct.
Yeah, but you recognize those patterns. Now, our pattern recognition is like it's all lizard brain shit. Okay, like it is. It's all lizard brain shit. But that doesn't mean it's not sometimes useful. But it is important to understand its use. Because it can.
Right, you know, and that's what through this conversation today. That's what I was trying to do, because I started with give me an example where it would be useful, and then we got on the trans issue, and from there. So that's what I was trying to understand.
And you gave an example
is when it is useful to use that level of analysis outside of certain like laboratory settings.
Yeah.
I mean, you can. This is a great question. You can come up and join the conversation if you like to. The link is at the top, or it should be.
put your
Well,
partner
maybe
toes
not.
That's a great
in
question.
their ears?
The other thing that I have an issue with is when a question is asked like that and someone is so fully confident in their response or their argument that they absolutely refuse to see any other perspective. That drives me absolutely batshit crazy.
The dogmatism.
Yeah,
well, it's the dogmatic belief that one is so right that no one else could be correct as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like there's not always one simple answer to a solution. When you take male suicide rates, absolutely intimacy and sexual attraction do definitely play a role, but for other reasons could be equally true. So you could say a lack of proper parenting at a younger age, where they constantly seek approval from a father figure that wasn't there. That would definitely play a huge role in that behavior. You could take an abusive father. That would play a massive role. You could take an emasculating partner. That would be so you can see what I'm talking about. Like, you can say, well, the suicide rate is massive. Why? But you're not going to get one answer.
Yeah, no, there's a ton of answers, and it's figuring out which is the most, are there answers that are like,
Are there studies out there that have tried to break down the causes of male suicide? Or have they come up with like broad?
There's a number of broad reasons. Yeah. A lot of them do have to do with depression, and most of like so like lack of intimacy and sexual fulfillment tend to be symptoms of depression, not causes.
And then the suicide is an effect of the depression.
And then the suicide is an effect of the depression. Yeah. It does seem that, so now worth noting, depression rates seem to be going up across the board. It does seem to be like a thing that's happening but men have it worse.
Social media.
I think a large part of it has to do with social media.
And a loss of community and a loss of a sense of purpose is probably the two biggest things for most people in general. Not just, but men have a bigger
sense of balance and perspective too. If your whole world is social media, if that's your narrative all day long,
and we have to take into context there too. I'm sorry, Jeff. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead. You go.
You have to take into context the rest of the argument as well, which is women attempt to commit suicide more frequently. They just don't complete it like men do. Yeah. So
it's because they tend to
issue on both sides.
The ways women tend to commit suicide tend to be less effective than the ways men commit suicide.
Are the attempt rates comparable?
The attempt rate, no. The attempt rate is significantly higher for women.
Way higher for women.
Oh,
way higher.
It's women attempt way more, but and I think, but there's both. Yeah,
it's not that they suck at suicide. It's that like the ways that women are sort of like socially conditioned to off themselves. They're like conditioned to like basically they don't want there to be cleanup. They don't want they don't like
out of consideration for other people, even at the end.
At least that's the
assumption.
Yeah. Partly because like I think that it fits, considering men will oftentimes commit suicide with a gun and women will oftentimes attempt to commit suicide with pills. Which pills obviously are, I mean, dubious depending on the pills, but usually it's much less effective than putting a gun in your mouth. But it's also putting a gun in your mouth is much.
This is an entertainment channel, YouTube and the world out there.
I don't
say seriously. If I keep my channel after today, it'll be a miracle.
I mean, I'll come out and just be like, hey, everyone, if you have thoughts of hurting yourself or others, please seek help. Whatever. I'm gonna pull up the suicide hotline. Unironically.
No, I know.
It's 988. Please.
Yeah, 988.
It shouldn't be that complicated. It should be just like.
Yeah. For men, I think the most common comment about not calling into those kind of things is they don't feel like they're going to be listened to.
Yeah.
Vets have this significantly worse. Where there's been tons and tons of videos that have surfaced and tons of studies that that all correlate with, the anecdotal veteran experience, which is they go to the VA and then they get tossed around from therapist to therapist, and they get so absolutely frustrated that they stop going.
Yeah, the VA needs like some massive revamping.
Yeah.
Notably, it probably just honestly what it needs is a lot more funding, if I'm being honest.
I would agree.
I called when I was
a lot of the
younger.
things that I've heard, a lot of the stories that I've heard about the VA just sound like the system is just doesn't have enough money to do anything.
And take the VA and apply it to the mental health care system in general, the public one,
in general,
community, all of that. Like, yes,
mental health care is not well funded or regarded. It's just,
in fact, I have a friend, Dr. Eddie Waldrop.
Yeah, Eddie
is conflicting with the VA right now over some woke bullshit that they went after him for, and it's all in the VA now. And he's done podcasts. He did a podcast with Leslie Elliott on the topic, and I might try to get him to come over here and talk about it. But there are things going on in the VA right now that are not giving me confidence in it.
His first article was a fucking mind blower, dude.
Do you have the link to it? I can post it.
It was so good. It was so good. I don't have it right next to me. I'd have to remember where I found it. But
what publication was that in? I can try to find
I think it was like Psychology or America Psychology, something. I can't remember, dude. But it was such a good. It's so well written. Like, I'm so happy to know that man. Like, I miss talking to him.
Yeah, he's good.
If
you don't follow him, he's worth a follow because he's dealing with the VA right now, and he's exposing their process.
Yeah, and I think if I can put this in there, from my personal opinion, and this is just a purely subjective opinion, and there's a couple studies that kind of back me up on this, but I don't want to quote those, but it seems to me like one of the largest contributors to men's mental health deterioration really is the lack of what I would consider the ability to intelligently communicate their emotions effectively with the people around them. We were, traditionally we're not taught to talk about our feelings. So by the time we need to talk about them, we are emotional morons. And it takes years and years and the right people that you're speaking to be able to unlock those. And it takes a lot of dedication to oneself. I use my wife as an example all the time. I'm sorry, guys. But
you're fine.
My wife just did one very simple thing, which was she held space for me. It was non-judgmental. She just gave me the space to be able to learn how to talk about my feelings and my situations, so I didn't feel judged and I could get the things out of me. And I think over 5 to 6 years since that was in place, that we made those agreements back then, my emotional health has skyrocketed. I don't feel alone anymore. And I think that when you look at that very specific point, men feel like they're alone. That's the one thing that the statistics do pan out, is men's loneliness is a huge factor in the suicide rate.
Even men who have partners, oftentimes, like that's the scary part, right? And that's, I think, why a lot of this stems from just bad socialization from an early age, or not bad, but like we socialize maladaptive.
It's maladaptive.
But isn't the loneliness itself, isn't that just another step in the chain of consequences from that stem from lack of community and lack of purpose?
Yeah, and connection. Like, we're social creatures. Yeah. Connection.
I mean, the loneliness itself is more of a symptom. I still think. I mean, yes, it tends to be the root cause behind, like, unaliving rates or something like that. But I do think like the way to there's not a direct way to cure loneliness. I'd like to, or someone that just feels alone, but generally speaking, when men feel like they have a sense of purpose and they feel like they have a sense of community that they belong to, they don't tend to feel alone. They don't tend to, and they tend to be a little less. Right. I mean, am I wrong about that? I mean, if I am, please tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely right about that. And this is where I agree with Christians, is that one of the best ways you can do that is start going to church. Well, that's not an option for me, an atheist.
Yeah.
So, you know, I had to actively go out and I had to search for emotionally intelligent men that I could share my experiences with.
Where did you find
them? Surprisingly enough, in the left-leaning community, there's a lot. My men's group is comprised wholly of left-leaning individuals.
I'm finding them on the right in droves compared to
there are some on the right. Yeah, but
Steve,
it's a little bit more difficult.
South? Are you in the South, Steve?
No, I'm in the well, I live in Utah.
Oh, so you're near the PNW. Okay, you're actually near the PNW. Okay.
Yeah, so
I was gonna say, like, what you're talking about, how like emotionally mature men tend to be on the left, is something that I found when I lived in Memphis. When I lived in the South, that was just my experience.
Yeah, my experience is that group thinking, like making assumptions about.
Well, so
well, I can speak to this because a lot of my friends growing up are very right wing. So a lot of the people I grew up with are very right wing. And
are they right wing or are they conservative? Because there's a difference.
Yeah, I'm conservative.
Yeah, kind of a mix. A number of them are just like sort of like milquetoast conservative, and a number of them are very crazy, like weird right wing Trump heads. But all of them, that doesn't matter. I only know, I think maybe two of them are what I would consider to be like emotionally mature, like able to articulate emotions to friends and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the majority of the people who I found who were emotionally mature is people who were more left leaning.
Yeah. Can you pull up that previous comment, Jeff?
Yeah,
I want to address that.
There's a really interesting discourse happening in the comments about this. Like I've heard a lot of this.
And as usual, I
don't have a lot of ways to directly address it. I mean,
yeah.
I've got Ragnar here. He's making like the kind of the more Andrew Tate type points of like, you know, like you never show your wife, like, you know. I think it's a balance though. You know, there is a degree to which.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's about having a system. It's about having.
I want to speak to that comment specifically.
Yeah. Go ahead, Steve.
So, you know, the thing is that when a man goes out into the world, he's fighting everything. The last thing he needs to do is come home and fight you. That's number one. Number two is that there are some things that I will never tell you as my wife, ever, because you don't want to know them. And what I mean by that is I told my wife that I had stuck a gun in my mouth. And now when I get that 1,000-yard stare, she gets scared. And so do I regret telling her that? Yeah, I do. Because not because I feel weak or anything like that, but because I caused undue stress and emotional distress to her that she did not need, nor could she identify with, nor could she do anything to help me. The men in my life that I confess this to were far more understanding and far more helpful. So there are some things that I don't think your spouse wants to know and doesn't need to know.
Or that
when it comes to coming to you because they're sad or they're frustrated or they are having emotional problems with, let's say some past, traumatic experiences, absolutely hold space for them to do that. And you will find that your relationship with them is going to grow tenfold compared to demanding. And I'm not saying that, anti-dearest is demanding anything, but to demand the wholeness of a person's soul is asking too much.
Yeah.
We have to displace the emotional load over multiple people for it to be truly, in my personal opinion, effective. And it also breeds this environment with your friends that they can speak about their issues with you. So you're doing better for more people rather than keeping it centrally located with someone who might not understand the reasons why the socialization of the male psyche and the male body plays a role. If you weren't socialized from birth with that, you will have no concept of what that's like.
Yeah. to speak.
I have a lot of my feelings women don't understand. Like there are some feelings I have that only other men will understand and relate to. So that's why I talk to them and not a woman if I had a wife.
Yeah, Auntie, I'm not saying that I'm not sympathetic. In fact, from what it sounds like, it does sound like in your specific cases, the keeping their feelings to themselves was causing the issues. And obviously, like if a man, like keeping certain feelings from his partner is going to cause issues, obviously he should probably figure something out.
And of course, there is no one solution for every relationship. There are relationships. There are relationships where the woman really will support you and will want to know everything and will actually be understanding those things. There are relationships where the woman really doesn't want to know that stuff, and it just depends on the person. I mean, it's all gonna be, and it's gonna be the man too.
Yeah.
Like there are relationships where the man in the relationship might need to have that male support group and someone that they don't. And I feel like I need a mixture of both myself personally.
You're right.
I need.
Thanks for the call out on that, Chris. Thank you.
Oh no! I actually agree with you, Steve. I very much agree.
I agree with you too. I wasn't trying to call anybody out. I was just saying. I think I was just talking about just from Auntie Dearest, her particular perspective seems to that's the kind of relationship she needs.
Yeah, Homer's men all wept together.
Yeah.
I think that by generalizing, saying that that men should never share their what people are saying, men should never share their soft side or their emotions with their partner or their wife or whatever, saying that in general is not sufficient, and it's also not sufficient to say that we should share everything with every partner because it's not. Sometimes it's going to be too much for them, and you have to you basically just have to get to know your partner. You have to actually communicate well enough to understand what they need and what you need, and how you two. And if you can't meet those needs, that's where you have to figure out if that's what someone you need to marry or not. That's how you know if something. I mean, that's really see, people place their criteria for relationships all over the map and on all different things. But I think that's the number one thing we should all be. We should.
That is such a great point.
We should be teaching young men and women that the criteria for a long-term relationship isn't sexual attraction, isn't just how much fun they have or how much you like yourself when you're with them or something. It's, do you guys understand and are able to meet each other's needs? Like, do you understand what that? Did you understand what your husband, with your future husband? Do you understand what he needs, and can you meet that? And does he understand what you as a woman need, and can you meet that? And if those two things are true. I mean, because I don't even hear that in marriage counseling types. I've heard marriage counselors on YouTube and stuff like that talking about this and that. And they talk about making sure you have the same view on finances and children and stuff like that. That's just all important. Don't get me wrong, but that's surface level compared to the deeper thing of, do you understand what each other needs? And are you and then secondly, are you willing to adapt as you grow and change over the years? Are you willing to?
If Auntie Dearest, if you want that relationship with the man that you're going to be with, or the man that you are with, I would highly, and I mean highly, I would beg you to go out and buy this book. It's called The Myth of Male Power by Warren Farrell, and learn to understand why your man operates the way that he does. Because that book is so phenomenal. I've had female friends of mine read that book and have found profound growth in their relationship because they could now identify with why their husbands do the things that they do. For example, my friend's husband would not get his teeth fixed because he would just argue, well, we just don't have the money. We don't have the money, and yada, yada, yada. Well, after my friend read this book, The Myth of Male Power, she understood how to reach and communicate with him and change the way that she was approaching him. And so she went and she said, you know what, sweetheart, we would have the money for these, to have your, dentures, if you weren't missing so much work because of the constant infections and pain that your teeth are causing you.
Right.
That hit him right in the fucking wallet. And that's where men can identify with that. You know what I mean? So she changed it from being about us to about him in a way that produced a more positive result and she recognized that in her last statement to him was like, if you want to do better for us, you need to take care of yourself. So it changed the way, and that's just a very small example of the way that understanding your partner can affect in a positive way your relationship. So I would highly recommend, and I'm begging you to read that book, because it will help everything about what you're doing with your partner.
The Myth of Male Power.
The Myth of Male Power by Warren Farrell.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I've actually seen that. I need to actually pick it up and read it.
I read that book. I was so excited. I ordered that book. I was at work, and it sat on my toolbox for like 4 hours, and I kept staring. I just wanted to open it, but my hands were greasy. Thank God I don't do that work anymore. But I immediately got out of work. I mean, at 5 o'clock, I rushed out to my car and I immediately started reading it. I got 4 pages in and started crying because I had no idea other men felt the way that I felt. That is how powerful that book is, but also it speaks to how separated a lot of men feel from the world around them. They feel like lonely little islands out in the middle of a ocean that really they feel do not give a shit about them.
A lot of people feel like that. That's just a pretty broad, like, when
I think it happens more with men than with women, but yes, I agree that I think people in general feel that way. Yeah,
I was gonna say, like, I think that's a particularly Steve, what like your kind of anecdote is a very common one within like the trans community, of like people who will have, like, especially people like me who are grown up in these kind of like sheltered lives, and feel these feelings and don't really, and because you're in a hyper religious household, you can't really like express those feelings without feeling potentially threatened, and then finally you learn that other people feel this way too.
Yeah.
And that is just that in of itself is a therapeutic kind of like,
it's liberating,
like this weight off your shoulders, like I'm not alone. It's not just me. I'm not.
That's exactly how I felt when I read the first 4 pages.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a guy. I was like, I was surprised because it was weird because you have these passing conversations with other men and they're like, oh yeah, I feel that too. But you don't understand the magnitude of the men that feel that way until you read a book that was a bestseller, and this guy that is a super left-wing. He's the only man ever to be elected to the National Organization of Women in New York. Totally based in the left. And he started talking about men's issues, and all of a sudden all of the lectures dried up, all of the TV shows dried up, all of the conversations dried up because people didn't want to know, people didn't want to hear what men's problems were. And so he was like, fuck this, wrote a book, wrote another book, right? And now he's primarily discussing that. But this guy identifies with me. He gets it. He understands it. And we might be ideologically vastly different, but the shared experience is almost identical. It's identical enough that it moved me to tears 4 pages into the book. For example, there's a great context here. I got to another part of the book and I started crying, and it was a very, very specific example. He said, a lot of people say that history books are examples of masculine domination, or something along those lines. And he said, rather, what it is that they're 500 page books expressing male performativity, like what are men supposed to be. And instead of taking it as like, well, this is men dominating the world, he turned it on its head and he said, no, this is how we teach men that they're supposed to be. We teach men that they're supposed to be disposable. Right. And so I'm doing a horrible injustice to him. I've got the book here, but I don't think I've got it marked.
Yeah, no, you're good. No, I get it. I fully, yeah. I mean, you look at like history, like, I mean, you think about like a history book, and it's filled with, male figures throughout history, and either named or nameless, and they're all, at the end of the day, either because it's history, they're pieces of shit, and or they're disposable. Like they die horrific ways because that was their duty to do so, and
So what he says is, the most common justification for studying women without studying men is that history is men's studies. Women's studies is just an attempt to give women something equivalent to what men already have. True? No. Women's studies question the female role. Nothing questions the male role. History books sell to boys the traditional male role model of hero and performer. Each history book is 500 pages of advertisements for the performer role. Each lesson tells him, if you perform, you will get love and respect. If you fail, you will be nothing. This goes back to that whole, come back on your, come back with your shield or on it.
Yeah.
To a boy, history is pressure to perform, not relief from that pressure. Feminism is relief from pressure to be confined to only the traditional role. To a boy, then, history is not the equivalent of women's studies. It's the opposite of women's studies.
Who wrote this?
This is Warren Farrell. Let me see.
Why am I
where
having
he gets
such a reaction to it?
I don't know.
He's the one saying history is telling. First of all, history doesn't tell anybody anything.
The way we teach history is it currently.
No, I got the impression from the quote that just the act of reading a history book about heroes or warriors is going to somehow program the reader, if they're male, to believe that that's their role in society. I don't think that's history. I would call it something else. That's not what I understand by the study of history.
Well, the study of history is a study of narratives of facts, and you can't but study history without the narrative.
The act of using those narratives or facts, are using those facts and weaving them to some kind of narrative of personal development, I don't call history. I call like psychology or self-development or something. But if you're reading a history book to understand your own psychology, or get a model or exemplar for how
they're not reading them
to understand your place in society, to me, that's not history.
That's exactly how socialization works, though.
Yeah, kids aren't reading this in order to, but they are. Well, hang on. It is a form of socialization because
at the base level, socialization is the stories that we tell ourselves or that other people tell us about ourselves, and
that's what history is.
Full of narratives,
stories.
But that's not all of history. It's an academic discipline, like with a very rigorous methodology.
It's an academic discipline that's full of narrative.
It should be maybe. I mean, history.
Like if somebody told me they read the story of Alexander the Great and it inspired them to go start their own company, or it helped them understand themselves as a man, and they have a better relationship with their wife, I wouldn't say, "Oh, that person just did history." I would call it something else. I wouldn't, even though they're making use of a story out of history, using the story in that way, that kind of applied narratology, I don't label as history.
Sure. Well, all history is narrativizing. Like that's all history. I have this book over here. Where the fuck did it go? Oh, it's over there. About the fall of the Bronze Age, and it is nothing but narrativization. Now there are like facts within that narrative, but like the facts form the narrative. The facts form the story. Because that's how we consume information.
Maybe I'm taking us down an irrelevant tangent, but what threw me off was taking those facts, making them to America, and applying them to your personal life or your social life, and calling that history.
I mean, for the longest time, we expected men to behave the way that we read history books.
Yes.
Who did?
For a long time. Society.
Yeah, no,
I mean, that's
that's
literally why we're called the disposable sex. It's men that go off to war. It's men that go off to hunt. It's men that die. And I mean, this is part of the reason he actually alludes to the book.
Do the dangerous jobs that
right.
All the dangerous jobs in society are all typically.
But that stuff comes from multiple. It doesn't just come from history. It comes.
It does come from a lot of areas, but history is one of those big areas.
So one of the reasons why he advocates for men is that this view of history that men are the disposable sex is it comes, and why men have such a difficult time effectively communicating their feelings is I believe he gives one example where he's like, okay, well, if all the gender people that gender with you, right? So all the men are out in the battlefield. The last thing you're going to do is become emotionally close with a man that you don't know you're going to see tomorrow. So men tend to not make close relationships because that has been history forever, because we are the ones that go out.
That's
and fight.
one interpretation of history. Is richer than any narrative that we can reduce it to.
Well, that's why I said that's his argument, and it tends to me to make sense. And he also goes on to explain why the women's suffrage and the women's rights movement was so important. It was so critical for women, and it gave them it shifted us from being role mates to soulmates. Right. The problem is we didn't bring men with women into the emotional stage of soulmates. So it's a phenomenal book. Read it. You'll understand it way better than I'm doing it. I'm probably giving it a huge disservice. But a lot of his arguments make a lot of sense when you put them into the context of how men behave today and have behaved for time immemorial. It makes a lot of sense when it starts coming together. Are there other explanations? Absolutely. I've read some of them and they make a lot of sense as well, but this one makes more sense to me.
I wonder what on 100 years from now, what kind of history they'd write about today. How would they spell the narrative? And the narratives, plural.
I guess it depends on who wins.
Right.
Well, let's imagine that history book writers in the future are completely neutral and they only look at the facts. Like there is a strange lack of we don't really have many hero characters or anything in today's society, do we? We don't really have we don't have the same kind of like level of mythos around many of the female or male figures that we've had in the past. You know, even going back to the 80s, I think there was a greater sense of like, you know, importance of a place on individual people that did this or that. You know, like what do we have today? We have Bezos and we have Elon Musk, and like right.
I mean, there's not really so much. There's nothing really as unbiased history.
I know there isn't. It was a thought experiment. Yeah. I was just saying, let's assume that like the history would be written neutrally. There aren't like a lot of like standout figures.
One of Asimov's concepts of psychohistory, where they got it down to a science, and it was a foundation. I think.
Foundations, yeah. I haven't read it, but I understand.
Scientists that would study and calculate history.
Yeah.
Did they make a TV show out of Foundation?
Yeah, it's on Apple, I think. I'm not sure.
How is it?
I don't know. I haven't seen it. I just read a brief portion of Foundations, you know, here and there. So I couldn't speak on effectively. But yeah, that's generally the idea.
Wolves movie.
I know that the scientist's name is Harry, I think. But
yeah. Sheldon, is it?
Yeah, something like that. But I think, you know, the reason why I think Warren Farrell is so important is because he's one of the very few academic left-leaning individuals that stands up for men and men's health and men's emotional health, and really kind of gives us a non-feminist view of men's history that doesn't politicize the male body.
From a male point of view.
Yeah, from a male point of view.
Now we got the is it a white male now, or you know, like there's so much racism all around, but it's mostly from other groups that are not white, like blatant racism from blacks and blatant racism from everybody, even whites self-flogging I've noticed.
Well,
I'm white, so I'm allowed to be racist to other white people.
If there's one thing you can say that's true of all racist people is that they're all racists. I don't think that we can say that it's coming from the blacks or from the Mexicans or anything. They're just people.
No, I'm saying the narrative. The narrative is pushing the whites down the tubes. You understand this?
I mean, I definitely there's.
I have noticed an increase in the stigmatization of whites compared to
white males especially, and the females are just Karens, right?
What tubes are you talking about? I'm stuck on the tubes thing.
Tubes?
Yeah, you said tubes.
No, I didn't.
White males are getting stuffed into the tubes.
Oh, stuffed down the tube.
Stuffed down.
Oh yeah, I think I just meant like down the toilet. I think
Oh, like as in like the racism against white people is okay, but racism against other non-white
No. Racism all over is wrong, yet it's all right for people to talk shit about white people, and I don't like that. And not a lot of people don't like that, yet they don't speak up because they're cucks.
I mean, I don't like that, and I've talked about it.
Unless it's funny. If they make it funny, I don't care.
Yeah.
It's fucking like that's when reality comedy was real. When people could make fun of each other. Now it's all a big fucking like you're wrong, I'm right, and you're gonna die.
Yeah, actually, that's my biggest contention with like Dave Chappelle's whatever his one fucking stand-up thing where he made those like transphobic jokes. I don't care that he made transphobic jokes. I cared that he made unfunny transphobic jokes. I'm trans, okay? Other trans people make much worse jokes than what Dave Chappelle made, but the difference is those were funny jokes.
I must admit, like most of Dave Chappelle's, even though I think he's a great stand-up in general, his most recent output has been less than funny, at least. Like it's been. I mean, I thought the one especially talk where he's mostly talked about his like the trans friend that he had that that killed herself and all that. That was actually a very poignant story. I thought that there was a lot of sadness in him about that and stuff like that. I think that humanized him to a great degree, but there weren't many jokes in it. It wasn't really funny. It was really just like kind of like a TED talk, really more than anything. But
yeah, it's one of my things with offensive comedians. Like, I don't have a problem with offensive comedians. I fucking love Bill Burr. The difference is Bill Burr is funny.
Yeah,
like
he's hilarious.
Like that's the thing. He's got to be funny.
I agree with you, Busker. I do. There's and I've fought against this for a couple of years now, and I'm actually published on the topic in a couple of different places. Including a black academic journal. So calling specific attention to this exact behavior. My first article I ever published was called Stop culturally appropriating my white racist culture, please.
I love that.
And the very first line is, I am a white supremacist. Yeah. And the reason why I chose that hook as a first line was to shed light on the absolute fucking ridiculousness of the current state of racial discourse, where I have to be a white supremacist for you to try and bust me down. Yeah. I've got a couple of articles out there, but the other one, which is called Race Lining, it was published by the Journal of Free Black Thought back in March of 2023. Expounded on a term that I created in that called race lining, and it functions off of the idea that first and foremost, race is not real. It's a system of hierarchy created by the Portuguese and some Germans back in the 16th and 1700s to justify the slave trade. And to follow the racial hierarchy that we still continue today is actually a practice of white supremacy in its whole form. So I advocate for the abolition of race. But anyways, the whole point that I was trying to make with those two articles is that we use these systems to create and to implement and to reinforce racism when it doesn't make fucking sense in the first place. None of it makes any fucking sense when you get into the weeds of it. And my term race lining refers to redlining, and how we racialize individuals into groups based on in-group out-group bias machines. You know, we have to have someone fit into our demographic, otherwise they threaten our demographic by leaving it.
Because that's just how our brains work.
It's how our brains function. Once you understand that that's how they function, you can break that behavior quite easily, which is what I was trying to do with that article. But it's, you know, we tend to create systems that give us permission to feel like that, and I was calling it out.
Sorry.
No, that's not a problem.
No,
it was
please,
just
go ahead.
My perspective is that human beings don't belong in those groups. They don't belong in these highly, what I would call, irrational and illogical systems of value. And we can use race landing to understand how those occur. But also, at the same sense, we can criticize those that use race and this presumed power plus prejudice kind of construct, how it falls apart very, very quickly, even under the smallest amount of scrutiny from a non-academic mechanic from Utah. It does not take much. The only thing I've got going for me is I'm well read. You know what I mean?
It didn't.
So
I thought it was pretty flimsy too. I didn't understand why everybody was falling for it either, because it's the tiniest little bit of applied thought collapses it.
Right. Well, I mean, you take Audre Lorde, and she said at a lesbian convention, no less, you cannot tear down the master's house using the master's tools. And the master's tool, what she's referring to, is that kind of supremacy of race.
Yeah.
That, you know, people like Johann Blumenbach, Christoph Miner, Gomes de Zerara, the Portuguese slave trade, they created this modern construct of race. Before that, it was location, kinship, and religion based. Yeah. Had nothing to do with skin color. Yeah. And so what they don't tell you, and actually they do tell you in the 9th page of An Introduction to Critical Race Theory, page 9, paragraph 2, is they admit that race is a social construct. They admit it in there, but then they use it as this kind of weaponized form of discrimination, without realizing they're literally mortgaging the master's house. They're building additions to it. They're building annexes to it, but they don't call that out. And that's what I was trying to call out with those two articles, is you can't do that. You can't tear down something by upholding it and making it stronger. You just can't do it. It's not feasible. So my argument at the simplest level is the belief in race as it is known today is a belief in white supremacy and a support of white supremacy, because that's where it came from.
Yeah, no. I absolutely. Our current conceptions of race are, like, at its core white supremacists, or at least they were created by.
My conception of race maps onto skin color, more or less. Like
I have to add this. I have to add this, though.
Somebody's Asian, they're black, like that kind of
stuff. I have to be clear about this really quick, though. I'm not arguing that racism does not exist. Racism absolutely does exist, and discrimination does exist based on perceived racial group.
Oh yeah, I didn't.
Race itself does not.
Yes.
What does not?
Race.
Yeah.
The concept is a social construct that we made up.
But how is gender a real thing and race is not a real thing?
Gender isn't a real thing. Huh? Gender is a social construct in the same way that race is a social construct.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I just saw they had some was it here in the U.S.? I think it was. They had this cop that's trying to get his race reassigned, and they won't let him, so he's suing them to change races, because originally when they hired him, they only had 3 options on the form, and now they have 9 options. So he's trying to identify into his actual race, which is like Middle Eastern or something. Yeah. And they're saying, no, you have to stay Caucasian. And so it's going to this court case to see if he can identify out of one racial category into another.
I mean, that's less so. God. That's more.
Retarded. Come on.
Hang on. No, Jeff just explained it. It sounds like he used the options that he was given at the time of his hiring, and now they've given more options, and he's like, well, but like the option I gave was just the best one at the time. It's not actually indicative of my actual racial group, and I would like it to be
which side is more bold in the bloodline? See, that's where that you gotta do math.
That's what they did in Louisiana.
No, it's talking about identification. I think racial
identify
like race is an identification thing.
I never understood why anybody could identify as black if they had a white parent.
Well, because neither one of them are real.
Wait, but hang on. Hang on, Busker. Do you think if someone had a white parent and a black parent that they couldn't identify as black or white?
No, I'm saying they identify as white or black because they're both.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they are, but
like, yellow.
It doesn't. I've always.
We're getting close to like the one quarter blood stuff. Like, and that stuff is racist. That stuff is explicitly like the whole like cornerstone of what the white supremacists wanted to do. With race.
I think what Busker's trying to point out here is the racial purity test.
Yeah.
Is just absolutely bullshit.
Yeah, well, I mean,
we're all so mixed at this point. I mean,
I have a drop. I have a drop of sub-Saharan. My brother did his 23andMe.
Everybody does. Technically,
no one's gonna take that from me.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the reasons why like the hardline racists, the people who actually advocate for like the one drop thing, are so absurdly ridiculous. It's like, bro, you probably have an ancestor who was black. If your ancestors were in America for the last couple centuries, you probably have an ancestor who was black or was Native American or was Italian. Or
I've had a lot of my black friends say that I was black somewhere deep down inside, but I don't know why, because I'm as white as they come. But I know I've always been like, but Lib, I mean, at the same time, you were saying, you were agreeing with the gender is a social gender isn't a real thing. Then why does transgenderism even matter? Then like, why is there even such a thing as being transgender in your viewpoint? Is it just because that's the way other people see it, or I mean, like, what's the point of even? I mean, transsexual makes more sense in that sense.
Yeah. When I say it's not real, what I mean is that it is an arbitrary social construct that we created. It's not like real in the same way that like no, I know society did though.
I'm not saying the modern version. Like a lot of us did not create that. And
no, I'm aware. I'm aware because you're expected to assimilate into society. That's just a society thing. Take it up with society, Jeff. That's not my problem.
Well, you're part of society, aren't you?
Yeah. Yes. Well, if I can ask you a question, Lib, because I think I've kind of got a tap on this a little bit.
Yeah.
So I don't follow the idea that it was socially constructed. I follow the idea that it was a necessity. It was, the gender constructs were built out of a necessity.
Yeah.
And when you have tribes of people constantly at war.
Yeah.
You have countries constantly at war, and you're never in peace. You've got, famine, starvation, all of these things. You don't have time to question the gender binary.
Yeah.
But when you actually become at least somewhat of a peaceful nation like America is, now we actually have an opportunity to explore why do we have those things, right?
Yeah.
The ability to question one's gender is directly proportionate to the level of freedom that you enjoy in the country that you belong to.
Yes.
And that's why you don't see these things going on in war-torn countries. They do not have the privilege of peace to be able to do that.
And it's one of the reasons why when we look back in history and we see, people who we would today call transgender, they tended to have been within the upper strata of society, because those are the people who would have had the freedom and leisure time to actually contemplate those kinds of things. Also, there's like
we've all heard of the many European royals that were all like, basically bisexual and annoyed and like get moved and were very effeminate and talked, the whole concept of like the posh royal type thing, especially French royals, and like the stereotypes that we still have in society today about them, like that all is based on the fact that they were very effeminate, or the women were kind of masculine or whatever, and And it was only, but if you weren't in those higher classes, then you didn't have that luxury to.
And it's not to say that those kinds of people in the lower class didn't exist. They probably did, considering that those kinds of people
just human beings,
exist. But they just didn't have the freedom or the
power. They didn't have the power in societal standing to let themselves act that way without them getting just freaking bum rushed by the rest, bum rushed by the village and tied to a stake, right? So
I think that's why people have such a difficult time understanding the trans movement, is because when you take history and this is we're in a blip of human history right now. That it's never been able to be questioned, because human beings have never been at peace with each other at all on a large enough scale like we get to enjoy in the Western world. We've never had an opportunity to really take the time and ask, why do these constructs exist? And that's why whenever I go onto a show, I say gender is a social construct for some people and not for others. There's a very clear dividing line between those.
It is always a social construct, but whether or not we have the time, freedom, and ability to question that or take a look at it further sort of depends on our material conditions. And the thing is, interestingly enough, the whole this is just like a I've heard people say this, that like transgenderism is just sort of like, it comes out of the degeneracy of the West. People in the West are so comfortable and free that we allow for people to express this degeneracy, and they'll usually use that term degeneracy. And those are the same kinds of people who they use it today, but also they would have 100 years ago been saying the same thing about acceptance of homosexuals. They would have said, "Oh, this is a degenerate."
These are not the same people from 200 years ago.
Yeah,
the same people from 3 decades ago.
I'm saying the people who call transgenderism degenerate and usually use that phrase are typically the kinds of people who also today would call homosexuality degenerate.
And I think the internet magnifies the.
I'll tell you what.
Well, I've met these people in real life, and
I have too, but they're friends. They're very. I don't meet them just walking around the city every day.
Well, you live in Seattle, so
the parents who make their children's trans, I want them dead.
Hey, Busker.
I would love
the entertainment show that was
I would.
These are underage children. They that's child abuse.
If a parent is forcing their child into believing that they're a different sex than when they're born and stuff like that, I think that's child abuse. I think that's a horrific thing.
All they need to do is just mention it, and maybe you're female. And then they start thinking in their little tiny brain.
Well, they're higher status.
Yeah, I am female, and then they find out they're not later on.
So Busker, I do have a question.
A status boost.
So Busker, I do have a question. So do you believe that the existence of transgender people in public society is making this worse? Is making this more likely to happen?
No, it's society trying to push it on children. It's not even the transgenders, the real ones who actually.
Okay, so
the real ones, not the people pushing this shit on children and making up their minds for them. All but making up their minds for them.
Sure, I mean I agree, but I'm asking you, I guess. Where are these people who are doing that? Can you point them out to me? Because I also oppose them.
All over media. Everybody's trying to make it.
Right now, I haven't
watched the whole series, but I did watch enough of the Jazz Jennings series.
That's the start. I'm glad you mentioned that.
That mother is a sick person. I really do think she is. I think she's a sick person. I think she really did push that on her daughter. Who's now her daughter. I saw enough of it. I watched the first season and a half or so, and trying to see how bad it was. If it didn't really seem like the little boy when she was a little boy. It didn't really seem like she was really all that it seemed a lot more like the mother was, but very very similar like those shows about like dance moms and beauty pageants and stuff like that, and where the parents are just overbearing and pushing their kids and all this stuff. It felt this way as much the same way. And I'm not saying like maybe she's very happy as a woman. I'm not saying she's not. I'm just saying, but like there was definitely something sick about that girl's mother that I definitely did not like.
I also think the subset of parents that are using their weaponizing transness in their kids is smaller than the larger set of parents with just trans kids. So I think yes, that probably does happen with some moms, but I think that's like a subset of the trans issue.
Yeah, I think the fact there's a reality show about it all.
Yeah,
and it's
I agree with that.
I'm curious. So the Jazz Jennings thing, I didn't know. I was only vaguely aware of Jazz Jennings. I am Jazz. What was the issue with this?
That was the original trans child, right?
Well, was it the original one? But it was one of the earliest that's ever been transitioned physically. They actually did the bottom surgery, and when she was
they made a whole 15 TV show about her. How many seasons they make about?
She was the first person who picked up the national spotlight, went on TV, and was able to articulate her perspective and point of view with such innocence. Says Christine Conley, a member of the board of directors of the Boston Alliance of Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, and Transgender Youth.
I would just, all I can say is if you watch I only watched the first couple of I watched the first season and I watched the next half of the second season, and then I watched a few individual episodes and stuff from there because it was getting to the point where it was depressing me to watch it. I couldn't handle it. But
it's
TLC show, so it's going to be cringe. But
if you actually watch it, you cannot help but feel bad for the kids, just the children in this household. Period. The mother is obsessed with this idea that her child must be transgender, and she's very overbearing and she's very psychotic seeming, and I just can't.
Well, according to Wikipedia, her parents noted that Jennings was clear on being female as soon as she could speak.
Right. Okay.
That's a little bit
I understand that that's what Wikipedia says. I'm saying I watched the show that they put out there. That they seriously put out there as propaganda. I mean, literally, it really was. You can't. I mean, it's clearly trying to articulate a point about. It's trying to show transgender children in a positive light type thing. It's I watched the show. I did not watch it with a bias. Not as you know, Lib. I'm not an anti-trans person.
I know.
I was just about to say earlier. I think of Buck Angel having him on the show, and especially in speaking to him. I think of him as a male role model. I mean, I really do.
Man, old school trans are where it's at, man. My cousin, old school trans. He's 50 some years old. He went to Mexico to get his dick lopped off, and I respect him because he actually made fun of Bruce Lynn Jenner with me, and also the one in the White House. The what's that? French name?
He's. I don't even think he's a fully transitioned person.
No, he's not. He's not.
Just a cross-dresser,
he still has his dick.
Also, I'll make fun of Caitlyn Jenner.
And I want to hang on. I want to put in a plug for Lib here, because this new generation of trans, which Lib is part of, I also find very admirable things about. So it's not only
I consider Lib one of my few good. Lib is one of my few actual friends, people that I talk to socially at all these panels and stuff like that. I support Lib in all ways. I do entirely. I'm not speaking. I'm talking about, and I don't have any problem with that kid either. The girl that show.
Yeah, I'm sure it's probably cringe and weird.
I have no problems with that child. Her mother is psychopathic. Yeah, it's I mean, seriously, you see the way her mother acts and stuff like that. You can't help but just feel icky about it.
Maybe it's just I have this reflexive whenever people will talk about child abuse and transgender people. Then you dig down and they're and it's they just think that a drag show existing.
Oh yeah, that's not what I'm talking about. I mean, I know,
and I still think
drag shows for children are fucking retarded, man.
Well, I mean, I think so.
Children should not be subject to that.
I used to hang out with drag queens all the time. And
that's fine, but children should not be subjected to that bullshit.
What do you mean subjected?
Put in front of. Like,
I mean, their parent. If
like
it's their parents doing it,
burlesque, I agree.
Well, yeah, I don't think kids should. I don't think kids should go to any burlesque show.
Yeah, any burlesque show.
I've been to burlesque shows. I don't think kids should go to burlesque.
They shouldn't be taken to see Suicide Girls either. You know.
But all these parents love to take their children there. Like, not all of them, but a lot of them do. They love to take them. They feel so virtuous taking their children to train.
I mean, they've taken them to. I've seen kids at like drag shows and stuff, but those were typically not burlesque shows.
Ladies and gentlemen, people of the jury, I'd like to say thank you for your time, energy, and attention. And I'd like to take a moment just to simmer down this high conversation. I do agree with a lot of what Mr. Busker says, but we don't advocate violence or anything like that. We are a entertainment show. This is an entertainment broadcast. All ages are allowed here. So as you can see, Jeff did his little dance right there. And thank you guys. Just hit that like, share, and subscribe. Share this out with the world. And join the panel.
I would say we're very.
I do have it set for not for kids, though. I do.
Yeah, I would say we're very least PG-13, if not R-rated. I don't think that we are necessarily appropriate for all ages, but still, nonetheless, I appreciate the sentiment.
We're Y17. Okay, we're not. Yeah. I don't want a third. My brother's 14, and I don't.
All ages that are adults. All adult ages. There you go.
All adult ages. Okay, sure, but sure, yeah.
Why is it every single one of these podcasts turns into a trans debate, man?
It's because I'm on the panel.
I didn't feel like we were having a debate about it, really.
Part of it is because when Lib is on, it tends to. Because that's part of what he brings to this. But like Steve, we talk about men's issues a lot when Steve shows up. So different panelists bring different topics. There's like trends in the topics there.
And I respect the hell out of you too, Steve. Like I see you, Steve. I also see you as a great male role model because like you're like this burly biker guy.
You're like everybody's big daddy.
You're as manly presenting as anybody. I mean, you are a man, I know, but I'm saying, but you look like the part of like this dude that could kick anybody's ass. But you're more willing to talk about mental health and like about like what affects you emotionally and stuff like that. And I just respect the fuck out of that. I think that's
appreciate that.
Like I mean, not to mention like just in addition to the fact that you have intelligent conversations with anybody that's that you come on here and talk to, and I'm I like I said, like, but like I feel like people like you, like Mr. Buck Angel, and like I try to be that for my children, but like I look up to people like that, even though Buck Angel spent years doing porn. I mean, he's not exactly like any kind of like it's not like I'd want to encourage my kids to go into pornography or anything. But I still respect him and his opinions on it. He's such an empathetic, kind person. Like how can you not respect that?
I think wait till your children look into his past.
Well, I think broadly destigmatizing sex workers is really important. Like socially, like a lot of people will like view
I think
as like dirty
I'm sex positive.
No, I know. I'm just saying like broadly, like there's a lot of like conception. I have a lot of friends who are sex workers, and there's a whole lot of
I think especially what he said in I think one of the ladies in the documentary we watched, so that was Mr. Angel, the documentary that was on Netflix, talked about how like whenever he would do a scene with a transgender woman that had not had bottom surgery, essentially you're seeing a heterosexual sex scene, but with the genital swap.
That's most trans porn. That's actually a big issue with transgender like porn stars, is that for a lot of them, even if they want to get like bottom surgery, like they are disincentivized and sometimes just told like don't get it because like you won't.
Well, I mean, if your paycheck requires
it, it really does mess with your head to think about a little bit in a way. It does make you recontextualize things in a way that you can't fully logic your way out of.
Hashtag unionized sex work. Come on, guys.
As long as it's between two consenting adults and there's not a third party controlling one of those adults, I think it's fine.
I think
especially the problem is most of it is controlled by third parties.
Even trafficking.
Yeah. Hang on, Lib. It's talking about legalize, and you just shifted it to unionize. You can legalize it without unionizing it, but I don't want you to slip a union in there.
No. I'm saying sex work is in broadly. So, like for instance, someone who has an OnlyFans is a sex worker. They're selling their body.
You want an OnlyFans union?
I mean, yeah, I think sex workers should be unionized.
Well, that's different from
you know what?
Like,
you know what?
Like,
I think that's a good idea because then
because when I'm agreeing with you, I'm agreeing with legalization, not necessarily unionization. So those are two. Those are two things I want to keep very separate.
But
I'm with you, Jeff.
If you unionize,
I'm with you.
You don't need the whole pimp thing. The pimp thing that has existed since time immemorial, where like there's this one guy that's like he protects his girls and all that shit like
what
that.
What do you think a union president would be, Chris?
Basically, he'd be one big master pimp. He would have a big pimp cup.
First off,
and he would definitely need to dress. He definitely dress the point, you know.
Well, first off, the big thing is, I mean, when I say unionize, I don't mean like I guess our modern conception of unions. I mean unionize as in all of the sex workers get together collectively and collectively bargain themselves. Secondly, though, I'm talking about sex work broadly. There are definitely portions of sex work that are illegal right now, or not legal. I don't. It kind of depends on. Yeah, it depends on like your county and stuff. But that I think some of which I think should be legal. Because I think a lot of the harm that is done is because a lot of the parts of sex work are done.
Me and Frank watched a movie called The Sessions because it had Helen Hunt's boobs in it. That's why he wanted to watch it. But it is about Helen Hunt plays a sex therapist, literally a sex surrogate is what her term is, and her job is to kind of do therapy and help like people who are paraplegic or can't really like make normal connections with people to actually give them the experience of having that kind of human connection with someone in their state, and to try to open them, try to like fulfill that part of their life so that like to help alleviate their depression and stuff like that. And it's a very good movie, actually. I did not remember hearing much about it when it came out. It's got John Hawkes, who was recently in True Detective 4, which is a travesty, but he played the paraplegic guy, and Helen Hunt was the sex surrogate, and William H. Macy plays his priest, and a lot of it's told in flashbacks, like from his flashbacks of like he's telling his priest. And they can't fit his bed that he has to be on.
Macy is the priest.
Yeah, William H. Macy is a priest, and the kind of the funny part is that like they can't fit his bed into a confessional booth, so he has to do his confessions out in the congregation area. What do you call it? The sanctuary. They have to do it out there. And so like the things that he's saying, like the other parishioners like hear it, they're all like shocked and they like run away and stuff like that. And it's very and William H. Macy's character he's a very sympathetic like Catholic priest or I don't know if it's Catholic for sure, it could be Episcopalian or something, but he's very sympathetic and very like kind to him, and it's a fairly light film, but it makes a very good case for sex surrogate as a thing that should be allowed to exist and continue. I think.
Well, I want to hear
more than that.
Example from Lib about activities that he doesn't think should be legal yet.
I'm just saying I think there should be like regulations around the stuff. I think like there are definitely some. Like for instance, there's like underground.
Wait! He's tried to answer twice already. Go ahead.
Yeah. So under the category of sex work, you have things like snuff and bestiality, and I don't think those are. I don't think those are morally acceptable.
Of course not. Yeah.
If y'all are playing cancel YouTube channel bingo today, I think it's blackout.
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, I agree. I think that
but honestly, I think my broader point is that like, even if I might have taken issue, I might never use a prostitute, right? Like I don't really have any need or desire.
Would you be a prostitute if it got legalized?
I'm thinking probably not. Though that's just more due to like I don't think I have like the interpersonal skill set to like do something like that.
Oh, that could be like that. You don't need that many of them. That could be.
No, I mean, having known sex workers, yeah, you kind of do.
I think what they have in Nevada and Pahrump with like the Bunny House there, which is like I think still the only legal brothel in the country. They did a HBO series about it too, and like I remember me and Lindsay watched some of it back in the day. whenever it was on HBO and stuff like that. And like I remember, and I mean, watching it, like it actually does, like I think that's definitely it's a much safer. It would be much better if we had a system like that was like state regulated, and like there was like they had mandatory like health checks and things like that to keep people like I mean
Chuck,
that all
really
and keeps away the human trafficking element too. I mean it's a very
yeah. I was gonna say, Chuck. You said when society normalizes degenerative behavior, we lose as a whole. If that's the case, considering prostitution is one of the world's oldest jobs. We have been fucked from the start then, because prostitution has been around in basically every human society.
And we don't try that hard to get rid of it either.
You can call it degenerative if you want, but like, sorry, you lose.
Get to the bottom of that question.
It's just like drugs. It doesn't matter how much it doesn't matter how much prohibition you put on it. People will do it anyway. Like they will do it in an unsafe manner, and it will be and you're going to end up causing a lot of more problems.
Let me jump in here, because it's just like drugs. What happens is that people monopolize on it, right? So there's this one guy selling you the drugs. Now he's cutting your drugs that would have been clean if it was regulated or if it was allowed. So he's cutting your cocaine with some fentanyl. So now you're getting fentanyl. People are dying all over the place. So that's basically where it's at. I mean, when you legalize things, it usually becomes a lot safer.
Yeah, I was actually about to say there's a great example of this. So in Tennessee, THC is not legal. Period. You can't have the THC stuff, right? However, what was legal is Delta B or whatever.
Delta it is still THC. It is still THC.
But it's not regulated.
Yeah,
it's not regulated as THC. But the thing is, that kind of stuff is we don't know. We don't like have the research on that to know.
As someone who has smoked some of it, it is so much more powerful and so much less enjoyable than I mean, dear God, I mean, like I seriously, like
Chris, you're wrong.
I still have the pen. I still have like the pen that I bought that has the stuff in it. It's never gotten past like this tiny little bit of it because it's so strong that like literally it makes me forget my name, dude. I can't even remember who I am anymore. Like it's not
better comparison.
It cannot be good for you.
Well, if I can make a point, the comment that person made is degenerate, right? So this assumes some kind of a proclivity towards a specific morality, and you cannot legislate morality. Law has nothing to do with what's ethical or moral. Rather, laws were intended to uphold the rights of the people, and the right of the people is to do as they will with their body as they see fit. You can personally have the opinion that it's a degenerate behavior, but we have to be very, very careful when we talk about legislating degenerative behavior, because whose morality are you going to go based off of? Do you want to go off of mine? Do you want to go off of a Muslim? Do you want to go off of Baptists?
I'll go off mine.
Catholics?
I think mine's
who are you going off of?
I think my morals are the best.
Hold on, Lip. Hey, a better comparison for the marijuana argument is actually spice, because if you look up what spice does to people,
about the fake marijuana
and the damage.
I knew a couple of people, that K2 stuff and spice and stuff like that. I knew a couple of people that like started smoking that stuff, and like they, two of them committed suicide on it because they were so out of it.
It was just like weed. Like I could not tell the difference between it and weed.
Well, I could.
Spice is not weed, first of all. Second of all, Delta 8 is real marijuana's little brother. That's all it is.
Sure, but I'm saying it's not regulated.
It's not. You're right. Because it's legal here in Texas. I can go down to a store that's like not even a block from my house.
You can go get Delta 8.
Trust the vape.
Delta 9 and Delta 8. And Delta 9 is a little bit stronger.
Vape concentrate nor edibles are good ideas with that.
We've allowed the persistence of the most addictive drug known to man to continue use, which is
alcohol.
Nicotine.
Nicotine and alcohol. Yeah.
Nicotine is the most addictive substance.
As a nicotine addict, I can say.
Lib, give me 30 seconds, Lib. I'm sorry. Give me 30 seconds on this, because I want to drive this point home how dangerous this shit is. The detrimental effects of spice is rapid heart rate, increased blood pressure, seizures, vomiting, kidney damage, respiratory problems, stroke, and even death. And then the psychological problems are intense anxiety, paranoia, hallucinations, psychotic episodes, suicidal thoughts, and aggressive behaviors. So when you legalize marijuana, you're not legalizing morality, or you're not even making a moral objection or anything like that. You're just making sure that someone has access to something that's 100 times safer.
And that's my same argument for why we should legalize a lot of different forms of sex work. It's my same issue. It's my same reason for why we should legalize a lot of forms of abortion. It's because when you legalize them, you can regulate them and you can make them safer for people. People are going to do these things regardless.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're going to do it. They're going to do it. Like, I mean, look at what happened prohibition. Okay, they went like what was it like? It was a bunch of old women that basically forced prohibition on the country, that went around and like a bunch of like old school Karens. Then they went around and like got and they were hardcore, man. They used to throw bricks through windows. They used to beat the shit out of people. They would take sticks and beat the crap out of the people behind the bar. Like, I mean, like it was like they were insane. They were literally insane people that went around and pushed this on the I watched this whole history about the history of prohibition thing, and there was this one lady in particular, I can't remember, she had like a nickname that was kind of catchy that I can't remember what it was.
Women did this?
Oh yeah, no. This was it was women.
Was it Carrie Nation?
It was older women. Like, I'm talking about grandmas. Okay, I'm talking about grandmas that went around and were like mean as fuck, and just and started marching the streets demanding prohibition because and to be fair, people were drinking way too much back then. Okay,
no, the water wasn't exactly sanitary, was it?
Yeah, it wasn't either. Yeah, but alcohol was like so common to drink all the time. It was just ridiculous.
Look, Chris, think about this, man. Everybody drinks nowadays. Now compare that to the amount of people there were back then. How many people are drinking more?
Well, there's more people. There's a lot more people.
There's a lot more people.
100 years
ago. Let me take this one too, though. I got a good one for this.
Drunk at all times, and we didn't have vehicles.
Hang on. Let MoOse go.
Sorry. Check this out, because the side effects of prohibition too are there was a huge rise in organized crime. There was all kinds of like public health problems because people were using alternatives to alcohol. There was a whole bunch of like police officers and politicians that were bought out by the mafia. The mafia actually grew because of prohibition. Like, they became such a big thing. And murder.
They put poison in stuff and made it out to be alcohol, and it was poison.
I mean,
well, that's why I hesitate to legislate any kind of position where it includes some kind of morality. And I'm a libertarian, so I believe in less legislation, because this is a perfect example of why you shouldn't legislate morality, is because when you do, you lose sight of the real purpose of what the law is supposed to do, which is to protect the rights of the individual. And prohibition did exactly the opposite of that.
Yeah.
And you saw the detrimental effects of that by the amount of crime that was committed in the name of that freedom to be able to do what you want to do with your own body. We had a lot of other things, a lot of other laws that we put into effect that had deleterious effects. Right, across the board, you can name examples all day long, and I probably couldn't. I'd have to look it up online, but this is a perfect example of that. That's why you don't legislate morality, because whose morality are you going to legislate it?
Or you don't legislate morality and then use morality as your justification for the legislation. You can legislate morality if you have a for instance, I think that it would be a moral good to allow for abortions. But that's not my justification for why I think abortion should be legalized. I think it's because it mitigates harm. But
I think safe, legal, rare was always a good. I think that was one of the things that Clinton pushed.
They put just like with everything else. They pushed and they push.
Yeah, I mean that was a very good line for abortion. Was that it would be a rare thing, but if it was necessary, it would be legal and it would be safe.
Well, I think that's part of the safe, legal, and rare thing is that was like a you could only get abortions if it the abortion was gonna kill you or cause you bodily harm. And I'm further than that. I don't think we stop there. You have to give people the option to of bodily autonomy. You can't like stop at like, oh well, you.
But what about the baby's body? It's not just one person's autonomy we're talking about here. And it
guys,
it depends on what you consider a person, because
right, exactly. That is the debate. Like, where does life begin?
And actually,
that's why, in my opinion, Roe versus Wade was such a good decision, because it actually created that division between when they were allowed, when they weren't allowed. And on that topic, we also have to understand there is and still is no abortion clinic that will permit abortions or will conduct abortions past 26 weeks. None.
Zero.
So the whole idea that these were happening in late stage, second term abortions were happening is just completely fallacious.
My understanding is it would happen in hospitals a lot of times, but not in abortion clinics.
I'm probably sure out of necessity, maybe,
because like, okay, if you're getting an abortion at the third term, usually it's not because you were like, oh, I just don't feel ready to be a mom and I'm just gonna, casually do. It's usually because, oh shit, actually the fetus is actually septic, and if I attempt to go through with this, it will literally kill me. And oh fuck.
Or the baby is going to have like severe deformities or something like that would make it's
make
very
them
life
painful. Die painfully within a couple hours.
I think we can all agree that the whole partial birth abortion thing is a disgusting, horrific thing that, like, I mean, I can't believe that there was ever allowed to any degree. I mean, but beyond that, I mean, like, especially early term, like whenever it's barely more than like a zygote type thing. I still feel morally dubious about it, and but I don't, I wouldn't feel right about it for myself or my family, but at the same time, I'm not going to try to legislate against for other people. Like, I don't know what the morality exactly is of it, but I agree. Legislating morality is a bad idea.
Yeah, speaking of this topic,
there's a great point that I want to make here is that if you talk to anybody, you don't prime the conversation, you just ask this question right straight out. Is if you ask a question, excuse me, ask this question: do you believe it's a good law? Meaning it's beneficial, and it's if you're going to legislate morality or even bring morality in the conversation, is it morally and ethically justifiable to prosecute a murderer who killed a mother who was pregnant with 2 counts of murder? If the answer to that is yes, then you have a serious ideological problem on your hands. Because you are now by default admitting that is a life. Now you've got a real problem.
I don't deny that it's a life, but I do deny that it is a person, or at least contextually, I'll deny that it's a person. I don't think that we can.
Why should we listen to you? Who are you to make that determination?
Well, I mean, so first off,
who are any of
this is just my opinion.
Yeah, it's just
I'm stating.
I know, but with all of these competing opinions, how do we determine which ones are worth considering over others?
Because I think that the way I determine personhood is the most consistent without having issues. So I describe personhood as an emergent property of interacting with the world. Right. Okay. So you can't be a person until you have
until you've interacted with the world.
Yes,
because that would take abortion all the way to birth.
But the child's completely interacting with the mother's womb. That's a real world.
Yeah, that is.
I need to make myself clear. I'm pro-life, but I vote pro-choice.
Yeah,
I'm pro-life too.
I think voting pro-choice
the argument
is the pro-life
for
position.
like the whole late-term abortion thing is actually like an emotional appeal, and so it kind of ruins the whole argument of the whole pro-life thing, because using propaganda, like, people can find loopholes in that shit, and they can find where it's bullshit, and then they look at the rest of the arguments and they try to like just gloss over the facts.
Yeah, so I guess my big thing, I want to get everyone's thoughts on the recent Alabama thing.
The IVF. We talked.
You got to tell me what it is first, because I haven't been watching the news.
They
looked into it briefly.
Yeah, an Alabama court ruled that life begins at conception for the purposes, and in vitro fertilization, where they will basically take a bunch of eggs and inseminate a bunch of them and see which ones might stick around and be the healthiest, and then they discard the other ones. You wouldn't be able to do that anymore in Alabama, because that would be discarding human beings. as in like discarding a fertilized egg is the same as murdering a person, according to this Alabama ruling. Which
that's what I kind of heard more or less. Yeah.
Go ahead and take this one,
just
Steve.
Extremism. So the problem has always been with the abortion debate. When does that life become a viable human being? That's always been the debate. And you can make a simple delineation is when can that child exist outside the womb with as little help as possible.
I actually disagree. I don't think that's where the debate really happens.
Really? Because like that's the main debate I hear, and like I mean, and I think the best possible argument is if the baby can if that baby could be a C-section performed and that baby could survive outside the womb, then I see that as like I that's where I draw the line at. I mean, if
let me hear what Lib thinks the actual debate is, because we studied this in philosophy class, and that was exactly the debate.
So I'm just going off of like, I'm sure like at the whatever on the news channels or whatever, that's what people are debating. But your average American, as in, and this is just me going off of the people, because I've talked to a lot of people about this specific topic whose opinions range.
Bodily autonomy.
Bodily autonomy, abortion broadly, when life begins, and their main contention is that they have moral issues with abortion. Period. Like it's no. There's not like this.
The moral issue is because it appears to be murder because they're beginning life at a certain point.
Yes.
The bodily autonomy argument is tangential or irrelevant because you can't use bodily autonomy to defend murder. Like, well, I have the right to do what I want with my body, so I can kill people, and that's why where life begins is so important. Because are you using your autonomy to damage life? I don't think bodily autonomy is a bad. What does it stop becoming your body, and at what point does it start becoming another person? That is the debate.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where people want to take the debate. That's where I would like to take the debate.
Bodily autonomy is not the center of the debate. It might be one of the peripherals of it, but the center of the debate is the status of the fetus in relation to
the bodily autonomy is peripheral for like liberals, because that's just like a liberal thing. For the average like conservative, though, it has basically like, you could demonstrate bodily autonomy, your bodily autonomy argument, and convince them of it, and then they would still be against abortion, because
I think there's an unresolved debate of where personhood begins.
Well, my problem, my issue with legislating abortion laws is it goes back to the fundamental principle that you cannot legislate morality, right? Mm-hmm. If you do not believe in abortion, then you don't get one, but you don't then get the right to tell someone else to do with their body.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So the problem is it should have never been legislated, because each individual should be able to make that decision for themselves.
But then a religious person might retort and say, "But abortion is murder, and we don't allow murder."
What I would say,
and at a certain point, now when you mentioned that thing before, Steve, about or whoever was it mentioned it about the if someone kills a woman that's pregnant, then they get two murder charges.
Yeah, that was me.
Does that count? Does that count? Like if the baby, does that count even if the woman's 2 days pregnant?
Yes.
So even if they're 2 days pregnant.
I'll have to go look and find, but I
never had to look that up.
It's more of a thought problem, though.
That's an interesting.
It is much more of a thought problem. I do remember there being a case though where there was a woman who did not know she was pregnant and was murdered, and they discovered that she was pregnant after, and then charged the guy with a double homicide.
Yeah, and I think that's bullshit. Even though I agree. He's a murderer, so who gives a fuck? Kind of like at the same time, he's also a murderer. So I mean, throw the book at him. Like he murdered somebody. He didn't. Sure. It's not like it really matters that much.
No, I do think it. I do actually think it matters. Because again, like these kinds of things can set bad precedents.
Unless there is, okay, I see your point there. But at the same time, I feel like if it's like a premeditated first-degree murder, and it wasn't like it's not a crime of passion type thing. It's not a second-degree murder, and like someone just some creeper kidnaps a woman, rapes her, and maybe the rape impregnates her, and then he kills her, and then he gets. I mean, I don't have any sympathy for that person, right? You know,
No,
like
I don't
think
have any
it's a
sympathy, but I still think that our justice system ought to work sort of like consistently, right? There shouldn't be like this weird inconsistency where like, oh yeah, you know, fetuses aren't considered people except unless you murder a pregnant woman. And then
I agree. We need a definitive
Yeah, I agree. There does need something definitive there.
It's a problem to make us investigate our beliefs.
Yes.
My belief really is, of course, first of all, anyone who I've never once heard, and I grew up in a very pro-life household. My mom was even like a pro-life advocate somewhat whenever I was younger. Okay, she even did she went to some demonstration type stuff. She wasn't a huge political type person, but she was very passionate about it because she had a lot of miscarriages. Okay, in between the birth of my oldest sister and my 2 youngest sisters, she had 8 miscarriages, and like it broke her heart. It broke her heart every time, and that made her very passionately pro-life and very, very passionately anti-abortion. Okay, so and you can understand how, I'm sure even if you're pro-abortion, you can understand how that would affect someone mentally and make them, you know, super
no, I know my
mom
went through a number of miscarriages, and
yeah,
that definitely has affected her.
My mom had one too.
In the
I'm
opposite
gonna hop
way,
in here real quick, Lib. So yeah, you said it right there. Is the one thing that I have wrong with everything is it's so easy to take the easy way out, right? And a lot of people don't tell them about how the psychological trauma that comes from actually having the abortion. I've known many girls that have regretted it afterwards.
Me too.
And
That's another good point.
You know, it's mainly about a psychological issue. It's about a cultural issue, like because taking the easy way out often leads to these detrimental effects, and a lot of people don't realize that. You know, they're young, they're looking for guidance, and when adults are pushing things like that, especially parents, you know, parents that are like, "Oh, you're too young to have this child," or something. I get that a lot of people are having them young. A lot of people aren't responsible enough to take care of these children. And so that's where I'm kind of like on the fence, right? But the psychological trauma that comes from it is just it's exponentially damaging to society itself.
Well,
I do agree.
That's why we need to make sure that the doctors are informing patients of the risks, which
you can give them all the information you want, but until they go live through the experience, you can't. It's so hard to communicate an experience.
I'm aware, but like,
yeah.
what's our other option, Jeff? Like that's our best option right now.
All I wanted to do, all I was trying to say before though was about the thing with my mom was that I have never in all those years ever heard a single person, and I keep being told that this happens, but I've never seen a clip or anything where a pro-life person was actually saying that an ectopic pregnancy was like a DNC on an ectopic pregnancy was abortion or anything. If they call it an abortion on like the piece of paper, because my mother had an ectopic pregnancy, and like I remember seeing the piece of paper that they brought out of the whenever she went in there, and they had to do it right then because it was very dangerous, you know. And you know, my mom was really upset about it because she really wanted that baby, but you know, but she didn't consider herself, you know, like she didn't voluntarily go get an abortion for funsies or something like that. It was still considered an abortion, but the baby wasn't viable. And so like I hear this argument all the time from people on the left that these pro-life people, they want to outlaw all forms of abortion, even if it's like ectopic, even if it's like this, even if it's like that. And I've never actually seen that in real life.
Hang on. Just let's be clear. They are doing that right now. That's what the Alabama thing partially was.
It's saying that an ectopic pregnancy, ending an ectopic pregnancy, is abortion.
Because it would be killing somebody, yes. Because of the.
But it's not. An ectopic pregnancy is not a person. It doesn't have a heartbeat. It is nothing born. It's basically a cancer. It's basically a cancerous cell, essentially.
Chris,
it is a clump of cells.
The people who formulated this bill did not formulate it out of an understanding of medical.
A court ruling.
Yes, a court ruling. The court ruling was not made to like by people who care about the nuances of this. It was
okay. Well, I'm saying I just need to see some proof on it. I've never seen anybody who actually argued for ectopic pregnancy.
First off, would you like a list of states that either have bills or are pushing for bills that are attempting to have full bans on abortion, just blanket bans?
including and that includes, and that's not talking about viable babies, but we're talking about ectopic pregnancies. We're talking about pregnancies where the egg didn't fully even like attach
full abortion
to the.
bans. That's what a full abortion ban is, Chris.
I don't believe that. I looked into like the Texas abortion ban. It absolutely left room for ectopic pregnancy stuff like that, because it's not even considered a pregnancy. It's not a viable it's not a viable life in any way. It has no heartbeat. It has no brain. It is nothing but a clump of cells that it doesn't even resemble a baby at that point. It's more or less the same thing as like a cancer cell. It's just a clump of dead cells. It's not a baby.
The important part of that is that it will kill the mother.
And it will kill the mother. Yes, absolutely. I mean, I've heard this argument for so long from the left, and I've looked for the rightoids making that argument, and I've never seen it. I've seen them defend the opposite many times, and like
I have seen people defend abortions, the blanket bans of abortions.
Well, I've also seen people support late third-term abortions as well.
I mean, I support the legalization of third-term abortions, because I think that legalizing it.
No, I don't.
I mean,
if the baby can live outside the womb and it can, then that's beyond wrong.
Like there is a point here, Lib, where we can eventually, through discourse, figure out and make a decision on when that life is a viable life. Right? What we can't say is that there's a very specific time, but we can at least give people, a couple of weeks or even a month where we can say, like, this is the point where we know that this child can live outside the womb.
I don't think viable life is like the clear and only. I think that you would have to.
What's
what I'm saying is that there's got to be a point. There has to be a point at some point where we can say that this is a human being that does not deserve that kind of a procedure.
Yes, I agree.
As pointed before, the vagina is not a magical thing that if it passes through it suddenly becomes a life, or if a C-section is performed, the baby is exposed to air, it suddenly becomes a life. That's asinine.
That's actually a very hard argument to argue against. But also, I just wanted to take a note here and just say, this is one of those topics that's incredibly difficult, because it almost seems like there's no right answer and that there's no wrong answer, because of the very nature of what it is to be a human being.
Even if we can't make that determination, we can make an arbitrary one for the purpose of society, just like
we have to make arbitrary ones. All the decisions we make on this are.
But we need to make one that will know at what point it is a person and has the rights of a person versus what point it's not.
Yes, and I think that
those categories are important, and we need to, as a society, just agree on a line somewhere.
Yeah,
because
if your limit is the baby has to touch air, then you're committing a very kind of purist argument. Like almost a religiously purist argument, and that doesn't make sense to me that you would make that argument.
It might seem so, however, it is, to my mind, consistent with my belief about personhood, which is that personhood is necessarily experience. You have to be able to experience the world, and you can't do that until you are born.
The womb is a part of the real world, Leb.
What? Yeah, it is part of the real
world. It's a physical, tangible environment that the baby lives in. Just because it's not as massive as ours doesn't mean that it's not equally as real. So that argument does not hold water.
I mean, and think about children that are born into like various mental states, like a locked-in syndrome or something like that, or something where they are they don't really have they're so far down that autistic spectrum where they don't even have, they don't understand like even anything that's going on around them, or something. Like they're basically vegetables. Like so are those people? They have no experience of the world of those babies. Or it should be fine just to go ahead and just take.
Are you asking me if somebody who's born without any mental capacities is a person? Because I don't think someone born without. Yeah, no, I don't think that's a.
Oh, so it should be legal. It should be legal to end that. It should be legal to end that life.
Stop being surprised.
Mental capacity. Yes. No.
Very close to the euthanasia argument.
Really fast.
It's very close to a eugenics argument. It's a very eugenics
argument. Yeah, eugenics. Because you were being a little bit vague about what you were describing. Like, because
I wasn't trying to be. I was trying to be as specific as possible. I apologize.
Because you used like the vegetative state, and I do agree that if somebody is born and their brain is unable to process information, that is, they're not like, well, I mean, it's a living thing, sure, but I would struggle to be able to call that a person.
Oh my god.
Having a brain having a brain doesn't mean that you can interact with the world. You can, the term brain dead is like a thing.
Yeah,
they're
like, people. There's a reason like we have so much law and policy over when we turn them off.
So what was the girl, the deaf, dumb, blind girl, like that
Helen Keller.
One? Yeah, Helen. So Helen Keller. Helen Keller
had mental capacity.
She wouldn't survive a second of air in Lib's utopia.
But she would. But she was born that way, and they didn't know. They didn't know that she had those capabilities at that point. I mean, like, so from the perspective of everyone around, I'm
not convinced that they didn't know that she didn't have those capabilities. You would have to.
How could she? She was deaf, mute, and blind. She had no.
Yeah, but that wouldn't necessarily show up in a baby. That wouldn't necessarily show up at birth.
Yes,
I thought she was.
But neither would the brain damage thing either necessarily.
I could be wrong.
And we did. I remember the Terry Schiavo case.
No, you're right.
We did kind of face this as a nation, and I don't know what got determined from it.
That determining like someone's like, actually, I think it's pretty. I think we have a pretty decent idea of whether or not somebody's like, okay, let me be very specific. If there is a fetus that is born brain dead, okay, like the body is alive, but they are brain dead, okay,
that's still a person.
Are they?
Well, still a human being.
Well, still a human being, but like.
So I'm not advocating for eugenics here, but I want to kind of, I want to give Lib the
I'm not pro eugenics, so.
And yeah, but I want to give you a little bit of charity here, because I think what Lib is arguing here does have some merit, but our reaction to it can be very visceral. If someone doesn't have a brain, but their spinal cord is keeping them alive. Yes. We could easily, functionally say that human being is not a person, because they don't have the features that it takes to be a human being. They have no sensory, subjective experience of the world. Well, I know. Hold on. Yeah. We know that they don't have any sensory perception of the world, because there's nothing there to intake the information and process it. Right? Mm-hmm. There's no brain where the soul resides in there. Okay, but that doesn't mean we can't, because the problem is when we talk about that, we imagine ourselves pulling the plug, right? We're the ones killing them, and we get very uncomfortable with that concept. Yes. And that's equally as valid as Lib's argument, where it's valid that person.
I'm not saying it's not
because they don't have the required facilities.
Senseless murder.
I'm not for eugenics either, by the way. I'm absolutely against eugenics, but his argument is a valid argument. It just makes us feel very fucking uncomfortable. But I go back, and this is where I'm going to challenge you again, Lib, is that, just because the fetus is in a womb does not mean that it doesn't have a tangible sense of its surroundings and can't interact with it. It does. They know this for sure.
I know that. I know it from. I mean, you can call it anecdotal, but I can tell you for certain that the personality of my daughter, my daughter Juniper, was apparent in the womb, and she is like, I'm serious, like she was like as active as she is on the outside as opposed to my previous daughter. Our previous daughter Clover was so shy and so quiet and so literally didn't move around enough that we couldn't that they thought the baby had died. They literally could not find a heartbeat. They told us the baby, so we had a surprise baby. But Juniper was so active and when she came out, she was like that. She's just like very expressive and very. I'm just saying, like you can feel the personality and like the kind of person it is decided from is there from a very early age, and there is no like I said, it's not a magical process by which like pulling the baby out of through a C-section or through a vagina does not suddenly imbue that person with personhood. And like that's my argument against it, is just that I don't, and I'm not saying I'm not 100% like blanket abortion ban person. I'm not. I do believe that there are any laws that actually do try to limit like someone who has an ectopic pregnancy or something of that sort from getting that taken care of and having to, even despite how painful and horrible it will be for that mother. I completely think that's horrific, and it's barbaric to even consider it like that. I completely agree that but at the same time, if it's let's imagine a woman gets pregnant with someone's baby, and she's perfectly happy about it, but then the husband or the father leaves her at the 8th month, and then so she decides that fuck it, I'm not having this baby, I'm not having this asshole's baby, and she decides. I think that is at that point. As much as that might suck for the woman, and of course this would all be so much easier. It would be such an easier argument if we had a good and functioning adoption system. If we had a good,
it sounds like Lib might be
adoption
confusing
system.
life and consciousness, where life begins versus where consciousness begins.
No,
Or
I
having
agree.
consciousness be a
I
necessary
agree. I
condition
agree
of
that
life.
life begins at conception. It necessarily begins at conception.
So
However,
then are you equating personhood with consciousness then, instead of is consciousness required for personhood?
It's conscious in the womb that there is no argument about that.
But we're talking about the cases where some may not be. Like if you're mentally impaired, you may not have the consciousness.
That's true.
And do you still qualify as a person, or do you not, because you lack this element of consciousness that's necessary to personhood?
Yeah, and I think that people who lack conscious and who I would also put another asterisk there, because someone is probably going to talk about people who are in comas or who are in vegetative states, and while they may not currently have be conscious, they're not dead, or in a vegetative state. Somebody who's in a permanent vegetative state, I would who's brain dead, is for all intents and purposes dead.
There's no chance. The doctors say, there's no chance they will ever regain consciousness. They will be in this state and until they die, and basically the family decides to cut life support because it's an undue burden on them to be paying the medical bills and stuff like that. That's basically the same argument you have for a lot of other abortion cases, where it's an undue burden. They couldn't possibly take care of the child. And once again, even though there is a trauma aspect to childbirth, I do think that if we had a functioning, healthy adoption system, this whole situation would be so much easier to decide on.
Adoption is a fantastic alternative to push
because adoption so far, the foster care system is horrific. Orphanages.
There are so many gays that need kids right now.
Yeah, and seriously, and
hey Chris,
I support that.
Do you know Jesse from the Missing Link?
What's that?
Do you know Jesse from the Missing Link Live, right?
Yeah, I know him.
Yeah. So he
Jesse.
actually he interviewed somebody, I think it was a couple days ago, that was declared dead, gets to the morgue, and he comes back to life.
Yeah, that's actually happened a lot of times.
That just sounds like medical malpractice.
When it comes to the brain dead thing, I think that you have to actually be 100% certain that this person is brain dead, or 100% certain that
we already have law that line we determined.
That's where that's where the idea of zombies came from. Originally, it was people that were being drugged with a neuro what do they call it, a neuropathic.
That's the one that you talking about in Haiti, the serpent and the rainbow.
The Haiti, the serpent and the rainbow.
That's just one, because zombie legends have been around longer than that, but that's just one form.
For me,
I'm talking about the current conception of zombies our most modern conception of it came from the fact that these people would be dosed with something similar to the blowfish neurotoxin. And it simulates death in every single way, and then they would come out of it and claw themselves out of the grave and stuff like that, and therefore zombies, And
that's where the phrase "Saved by the Bell" came from. They would put strings in the caskets with bells attached to them, so that if you happen to come back alive,
that puts a whole new spin on that show.
Wow, wow! I didn't know that. That is a whole twist.
The whole time, god damn! I just realized that. Those people, they were all dead the whole time. That's amazing.
Lib, I want to agree with you on something very specific here, which is, you and I both have the sensibility to say, at least along our lines of belief, I would say, that we understand that women's autonomy is incredibly important. Yes. And we both believe in the autonomy of human beings to make their own decisions and their own fate.
Yes.
My argument necessarily is, at what point do we know that child has that consciousness that we're both arguing for, that would determine them to be a human being who is capable of perceiving the world around them, and that could mean the womb.
Yes.
At what point does that happen? And I believe that there's some studies out there that explore this. I'm not sure where they are or what they say.
There are.
But there has to be, dude, a morally unjust time to end the life purely because it's an inconvenience.
Yes, I do think so.
But we still can't morally, we cannot legislate morality.
Yes,
that's the difficult part. There's no part of this conversation that is easy, right, or wrong. We do definitely have to be honest with our fucking selves.
I think there is.
Agree.
I do think there is a part of this that can be wrong, because I think, like, if we were to say all abortion is illegal, I would argue that is not only bad from like a utilitarian perspective, but it's morally, I think, wrong. But I see your point that it is a very complex topic, and I agree. And in fact, if the more we study this and the more we understand about human consciousness and the brain, if more comes out, I am absolutely open to having my position changed to be much more nuanced. I'm completely open to that. In fact,
that's all I personally wanted to hear. That's all I wanted to hear from you.
I can,
because we can work with that.
Yes. Now I can say that I think like there have been some like studies done. We know like the brain forms at like what is it, 16 or 20 weeks, something like that. We know that's when like the brain usually finishes forming, and like that's like an early cutoff point. We know that like before that there is no.
There's a heartbeat and a brain. Yes, that starts absorbing data at that point. Yes.
Well, the heartbeat happens first. The heartbeat.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying the heartbeat's first, and then the brain comes along a little later, and then it starts, and then sensory perception from even within the womb, everything from voices to music. Like your baby will recognize your voice even when it's born. I mean, it does. It will react differently to your voice than it will to the voices of doctors and other things it didn't hear as much. I've seen it myself. I've seen it with my sisters. I've seen it with myself, my own children. I mean, like there is definitely a person is being formed in that womb. My daughter was born 2.5 months premature. 7 and a half months. I mean,
my issue is I would have to see like I'd have to see something on that more than just.
I'll tell you what, Lib.
Because
I tell you what,
no. I'm not saying I don't believe you, Chris.
Like, I'm saying you have a kid.
No,
you have a kid, and then you come back and talk about it, and then we'll have a discussion about what you think about it then. Because once you have a kid, that it will change your perspective. I promise.
No,
it definitely changes your perspective when you have children.
If my personal thing, if my personal experience were to convince me, I'm not sure that that would change my position, because at that point I'm only going off of my personal experience. Like. And I can be wrong.
I have never met a single person who had like a hardline stance about abortion like you have, that then had a child that didn't change their stance afterwards. And I've known a few of them. I'm not saying that you would be. You might be the exception, man. And you know what? If that was the case, I'd respect it. I would respect the fact that you're sticking to your principles, your guns, or whatever you want to call it. And I would say I have respect for that. But I've known a lot of people that were very liberal and on the left and had like those kind of views that kind of like the personhood argument and all that stuff like that, and then they actually had a baby and then they're like, yeah, I don't think so anymore. And
a lot of times they'll only admit it behind closed doors.
Whenever you experience it, we experience what happens, and you can say that experience is a delusion or something. Like you're self-deluding yourself.
I'm not saying that it is necessarily a delusion. What I'm saying is, have you accounted for the fact that you may have been imagining things? That there could have been confirmation bias?
They're obviously they're anecdotal, subjective experiences that he's had, but if I can say this, the reason why I'm pro-life, but I vote pro-choice is simply because I understand that at no point in time do I have the right to tell another person what to do with their body, even if they wanted to kill themselves. I have no right to do. I have no right to legislate that. So the problem then becomes, how do we change the culture to be more consistent with reality? That's the part that the reason why I'm pro life and vote pro choice, because I'm not sure we're there yet. I don't like the metrics we're using to judge these criteria. And so the only thing I can do right now is operate off of the individual's autonomy that I know is alive right now, and the rights that they get to choose. Yeah. So I mean, I can still have the argument of when I think it is something is appropriate, but I can't tell my wife what to do with her own body. I find that,
of course,
I find that ethically reprehensible.
You feel like it's your baby too, like you're okay with her making a decision for something that's shared.
I was in this predicament, Jeff. Sorry to cut you off, but we knew where you were going. I actually dated a girl who decided that she was gonna, abort, and I didn't try to assert dominance over her. I didn't try to tell her that, I told her how I felt about it or whatever, and she went along with it, and it fucked me up psychologically. You can call me a pussy, anything you want, but it definitely it hit me hard.
I think abortion is a very serious topic that like people ought to consider very carefully, because I've had friends who've gone through with abortions, and it's not a fun experience. Even I had a friend who she was only like 4 or 5 weeks. It was like she had an actual pregnancy scare, and then it was like turned out, oh, she actually was pregnant, and she really couldn't be at the time. And so she got an abortion, and it like she had issues. She had to go see a therapist afterwards for a long time. Yeah,
that brings in a whole other argument. I've seen it fuck people. I've seen it fuck women. I've known many girls now in my lifetime. I mean, I'm 42, so I've known enough people that have confessed that they had an abortion, or like I knew about them having it at the time, or whatever the case was. And every single one of them, I've never not one except for one, all except for one. There was one girl I knew that was a friend of a friend, and she was essentially. She talked very openly about it, was practically giddy about it, and she was a sociopath in general. She was kind of a psychopath.
Those people are fucking weird.
Yeah,
well, that's going to be an aberration,
Yeah, she was the kind of person, like she scared me as a person before I knew that. And then I was like, well, that makes sense,
Yeah.
Like,
the scary part about this whole conversation really is that in some states that are zero tolerance policy for abortions, what happens when the mother miscarriages? Then they have to prove that it was a natural miscarriage, or they face jail time.
I hate that shit too. I hate that shit.
Yeah, there's some serious problems within our country and how we legislate these laws, because that to me is a fundamental violation of the mother's rights.
Yeah,
and these states don't acknowledge this as a fundamental problem with what they're trying to promote, because again, they're legislating based off of a moral system that is not compliant with the rights of the individual.
Yeah. Chopper Jeff said he's surprised no one has brought up the argument of cases of
ape incest. Yeah.
And I think the look, I'm trying to do better, okay?
All right.
Jeff, and I think the reason why we haven't is because I think most of us are probably in agreement. I think even if we were in like a worst case scenario world where like abortion were getting illegalized everywhere, I think all of us would still want those exceptions, because those are very, very important exceptions. I
must admit, I could never try to tell a woman what to do in that situation. I would never presume to. I'm not in that position. That's a horrifying position to be in.
If it was my kid,
but on a moral level,
I would feel like I had a stake in this decision. That it should not be only hers.
But we're talking about grape.
The ape and incest.
Yeah, ape incest. We're not talking about like it's just like we're talking about like someone is R-worded or it's or R-worded by a parent or something like that. I will fully say that I could never tell someone what they should or should not do
in that case,
Like you can't.
At the same time, I do feel like the moral standard or whatever still somewhat applies to it. I feel like, I mean, especially if it's a child and like they're not old enough to actually carry the baby to term, then yes, that's an instant, like, there is no reason.
There was actually a case in Ohio.
I know. I'm aware of it.
Yes, there was a young girl who she had to leave the state because the state was going to force her to carry that baby to term. A 10-year-old.
Yeah.
And some states will still criminalize her for that.
And that's bullshit. Okay, and I completely think that's bullshit. I don't with zero caveats do I think it's bullshit because that's just like basically saying like one gets to live and one gets, because like that little 10-year-old cannot carry a child to term and not successfully, not in today's. I think maybe people were built hardier back then. I think there was a time in history where women did have children that early, but that's
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
There are stories in many history books.
There are lots of stories, but I'm skeptical of them.
I'm skeptical too. Okay, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying that
modern medical,
what we know of history is what we know of history. Though I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying, like, even though I still don't know what the actual cases of that is, I still think that, I mean, I would never tell someone, I would think that's one of those cases where, yes, it's better to end that pregnancy and better to save the life of that child. Hopefully end it within the first 3 months, whenever, before, and to make it as in a humane way as possible. I mean, if they wait until but if they wait until 8 months, like at that point, they could probably just do a C-section. The baby would live fine, and so would the girl. I mean, it's not. I mean, and I'm not saying that the woman should have to take care of that child. I think we should have. That's always their leftist argument. Yeah, all conservatives are all for women, making them have babies. If they don't want to give them any support once the baby's born. I completely disagree with that. I think we should give mothers way more support than just WIC.
Well, I agree, but no. The GOP, the Republican Party, does not agree with that. The Republican Party,
I know they don't
explicitly, does not want to support mothers after.
I am aware of that. I'm aware of that. I'm differentiating myself from that. I am not a Republican. Okay, I am saying that, like, I don't associate myself in any way with the GOP, even though even though some of my opinions on abortion might align with theirs.
Republicans say that.
Yeah, and not all Republicans say, and most Republicans I know,
the Republican Party, though, as a matter of course, are pushing for those kinds of things, those kinds of sort of
it's in the platform.
Yes. To push for anti-abortion.
There was a study done. There was a poll taken years ago. I think it was Pew Research that did a poll and found that a vast majority of Americans, it was like 60 to 70%, didn't agree with either of their parties' political opinions on abortion.
Yeah,
I mean, most people fall in the middle on it.
It also is important. It's not even just in the middle. It's something like 65 or 70% of Americans agree that abortion should be broadly legal. This is Americans broadly.
Most of these people do not support third-term abortions.
Well, third term abortions is like a specific. When we talk about, like, when they say like broadly legal, what they mean is like there shouldn't be a blanket ban on abortions. That obviously there should be a tremendous amount of leeway.
They had all those years to put something together.
I know. Well, the reason why the Democrats didn't push for legislating, like the Roe v. Wade stuff, is kind of the same reason as to why the Republicans aren't supporting Biden's, supporting the wall, the money for the border thing, because if they actually solve the problem, then they can't bitch about the problem
longer. They use it as a political football, and if you actually solve the issue, the football disappears, and then everybody has to go home because there's no game to play. I know. It is the eternal problem with all politicians, is that,
I mean, I actually don't think that that's actually what happens. Like, that is what they think happens. That's what they think will happen. I don't think that'll actually happen. I think that they're like a bunch of fucking stupid dumbasses who just are playing with people's lives for politics.
Yeah, I don't think they're actually being that Machiavellian or thinking about it like that. I think they've deluded themselves into their moral positions or standpoints or whatever it is.
A lot of people have.
But when it comes right down to it, on some level, that's what they're doing, though. You know, like they're keeping these arguments alive so that they always have that on their side of their side of the base. You know, like their base will always have that side. They'll always have that.
Chuck, do you disagree with the characterization that the Republican Party is broadly anti-abortion?
No, I didn't agree.
I
with
agree with
I'm
the
asking
point about
Chuck.
lumping people into one pot when you say stuff like that, because I have the same reaction. You don't. You seem to lack nuance when it comes to Republicans. It's this one entity called Republicans. It's
for what it's worth, I do the same with Democrats.
Their political affiliation.
For what it's worth, I do the same with Democrats.
To be fair, I also have the same. I have the same lack of nuance with people that call themselves Republicans or GOP party members, or people that call them Democrats or DNC party members. I find both groups tend to be brainless.
I-Fi, are you going to be just like a little bitch just sitting in chat and not going to actually come up and have the talk? Because it sounds like you want to.
Why are you encouraging him? Why are you encouraging him? It's been such a nice conversation so far.
Oh no, I've had a nice conversation with y'all. I-Fi though is being
Lib. His voice. He's taking care of his voice.
That's true.
Well, maybe he shouldn't talk so much shit.
Are you trying to sabotage?
He does say Republican. He did disagree with. He did say Republicans are trash. So.
I mean, yeah, but like he says that partly because he doesn't think they go far enough.
They go far enough. I know exactly. But I'm just saying. Hey, we can at least all agree that Republicans are trash. So right.
I mean, I don't even think Democrats are trash because they don't go far enough. I think Democrats are trash because Democrats are fucking trash.
I don't think you. I think you even have limits. Like there are people that are wanting to go way further than you, and you're able to draw a limit to that.
Yeah, I agree. You're a very set.
I don't consider you as far as you can.
Yeah,
go,
no, that's.
I find maybe
for what it's worth, I'm very far. Like I, as much as like I am as honest as I can be. I also will oftentimes do my best to sort of like moderate my language and stuff on here, just because.
I've had conversations with you. You're more sensible. You're more sensible than 90% of the people that
but I'm still a radical is the problem. This is the thing. I'm not a radical.
You're a radical when it comes to your ideals. You're not a radical when it comes to your practical, like the way you practically view the world, and that's what matters. I mean, I have radical ideals.
He's a sensible. He's a sensible radical.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, because
I ascribe to the rules for radicals. That's a great book, by the way. Everyone should read that. That's a great book, especially for like community organizing. It's actually a book about community organizing. It is by like a left-wing socialist organizer, but he's like talking about how to build, grassroots, bottom-up communities for a whole variety of things. It's actually a really
let me take a look because I do that same thing. I have that same.
I mean, it's all from a socialist perspective.
In what way is me? It has in the sense that I've been pushing back and disagreeing with most things. How is it? Yeah, I guess I do want respectful conversations amongst people that disagree with each other. But you can't say I don't want any disagreements.
What are you looking at? Nobody's doing that up here.
Yeah, I didn't like nobody here is like nobody. We've been disagreeing about things constantly, but we're disagreeing.
I-Fi is a time traveler.
Lib and I fight all the time. Chris and I have had yelling, screaming matches on here for hours before.
I-Fi is a time traveler. He's traveling from back in 2014. Okay, and he's one of those anti-SJWs who just like fucking just screamed online about how bad social justice warriors are.
Yeah, you call my fire screaming harpy.
I'm gonna name one of my D&D harpies after you. Okay.
Well, it's like people see this kind of stuff and they're like, well, they're not fighting hard enough. Well, the point isn't that we're not fighting hard enough. The point is that we can have rational debate, investigate people's beliefs, interrogate those beliefs, tear them apart if we need to. And try to find some semblance of truth in what we're discussing. But when you're combative and defensive and calling people names, you're not doing anything at all. You're stagnating a conversation.
Not that there's not times to be combative. I was going to say not that there's not times to be combative. I do think there are times to be combative. It's just you have to understand like
verbal combat every Friday.
Hell yeah.
Well, there's only two ways to change someone's mind: by coercion or by force. And if you're trying to force me on the internet, guess what? It ain't gonna fucking work.
Persuasion.
You've got to convince
persuasion or coercion. That was what it was.
There's a difference between a sparring match between people in a boxing ring and a bar fight, right? A bar fight is like, purely emotionally driven. You've heard somebody say the wrong thing or you misheard it, and like you throw a bar stool and you hit them, and then it turns into a whole thing. That's the kind of fights that I think IFI wants to see. Whereas we have sparring matches.
I don't think IFI
where even if one of us like manages to knock the other one down, at the end of it, we'll still hold our hand out and be like, good game kind of thing. Like we have a sense of sportsmanship about it. We have a sense of respect about each other's opinions.
I'm not as cynical as you all are about IFI. I don't think he wants to see
IFI murdering babies is in fact good. Yum 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 yum. Look at this. I'm nomming on the murdered babies. So good. I love it. Delicious. I love drinking their blood and adrenochrome.
I mean, he is a troll, and you are feeding him. You are playing.
Yeah. I mean, it's called a dialectical process for a reason. I mean, you're trying to get to the bottom of truth. That's what we're trying to do here. And when you stonewall or you are combative to the point where you can't even admit that someone's got a good argument, it's a moot point at that point. You're not doing anything. You're just arguing for argument's sake. And the security and banality of your own voice becomes more paramount than the truth. Yeah, I have a fucking significant problem with that. I have a significant fucking problem with that. Yeah, and that's why I try to keep things calm. I try not to call people names. I've actually gone off the rails on one person before that absolutely fucking deserved it because they were misrepresenting my position so badly. It was just like it warranted intolerance. But for the most part, if these conversations can remain, tolerant of intolerant ideas to the point that we can then criticize them and tear them apart if we need to. I mean, that's the whole fucking process of society. That's the whole Democratic Republican. And I mean, Republic perspective is that societies are built best when people who are involved with them debate ideas.
And if there's one thing that I think that we do very well here on this panel that I don't see in a lot of other panels is that we're very good about not condescending to one another, which is something IFI does have an issue with. We're very good about not condescending to one another and being like, you poor stupid little thing, you just don't get it kind of thing. And I hate that. I hate that. I hate that kind of like that.
Lib is guilty of that too in some of our conversations, and I've probably done it myself. But that some of that's subjective too. Like
I also think we're pretty good at like pointing it out and calling it out when it gets like particularly bad. Like I know there have been a couple people who have been like, oh, Lib, you're just young, obviously you don't understand this, you're young. And it's like, oh, come on, now that is like almost definitionally condescending.
Well, you'll understand that in 20 more years.
Yeah, no.
Or
the
ones that
doesn't make it not condescending though. Is I think my
this comment, which is
and I do try not to do it often, and I catch myself.
And it's like, no, I don't want all these things to happen.
Yeah, which
I'm
actually
an argument.
Also, speaking of really fast, I have a really good quip. So IFI said, what is a good argument for murdering babies? IFI, you are a really good argument for murdering babies.
Hey.
Come on, no, he set himself up.
Funny.
Come on.
He
set himself up. It was a really good one.
Entertainment Channel. That was one
it was a joke. It was a joke.
It was a joke. I love you, IFI.
Resident comedian Lib. Thank you for watching, folks.
That argument's been promoted so many times. It's become a trope with Hitler. Would you go back and
murder
destroy
Hitler,
the child of the child that was to become Hitler? Would you do it? And these are interesting thought problems. But I mean,
actually, probably not. I tend to enjoy other people around him were actually smarter.
Hey, fun fact, real quick,
where we all get smarter and we all can interact in a way that we all learn something from each other, or at least at the very minimum, learn where our argument falls apart and strengthen our own argument. That's the part that most people miss. It's like I don't come here to reinforce my argument necessarily. I come here to find out why my argument sucks and make it a better argument.
Exactly.
And you can't do that with name calling. You can't do that with innuendo. You can't do that with drawing straw man. You can't do that by stonewalling. You really the most disservice that you can do to a human being is dismiss them, because it takes no credible intelligence to do that.
Yeah,
I agree. Fun fact, real quick. Right after I had my child, right? One of my friends sent me a joke about dead babies. and I just blocked him, and I never talked to him again. Because and you know what? I was very sensitive at the time because I would wake up in the middle of the night and be like, "Is my baby breathing?" And so like now, if you say those jokes or whatever, it doesn't affect me very much, right? But we're all at different places, and we all learn through experiences and stuff like that. But at the time, the dead baby joke got me, so that's a fact.
Absolutely,
I can understand that.
Did he know like your
Yeah,
situation?
he knew I just had a baby.
Wow.
He knew I was like,
that's fucked up.
It was like a month in,
Yeah.
and I still was trying to figure out my shit and trying to figure out, what it was about, what being a father was about, and like the baby itself, like holy moly, it's not like having a dog, like like everything is on the line, like that you're responsible for every single thing that happens to that thing, that person, that child.
Yeah, that was just very uncouth of that individual to do that to you.
Yeah, it was.
I
agree.
But,
and I thought you're right. All I have is name calling. I clearly ask anybody in this panel right now. I've called them all horrible names. They've all heard my wrath. So I mean, yes, they've all suffered my name calling wrath. So
look at this.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Patty. I appreciate that. You really don't have to. It already forgiven. I do not care. But thank you.
There's one thing we can't forgive her for, though, Lib. She spelled liar wrong.
She did spell liar wrong, but that's fine.
Well,
I spell wrong all the time. It's fine.
Keyboards fuck us up. Autocorrect.
Yeah, keyboard. That's what I learned on AOL. Like, there's all kind of reasons for typos.
Yeah. God.
I used to be a grammar Karen.
Unless it's a published article, I'm not going to criticize people's grammar.
I just got a new phone,
especially if you're on a phone. Yeah.
I went from an Android to an iPhone because my dad had an old iPhone. So, an autocorrect, I fucking hate it. I cannot. I want to do so many redacted things. I hate autocorrect so much.
Well, there's that whole website. What is it called? That goddamn autocorrect or something like that. It's hilarious. And it's just a list. It's just a list of screenshots of the worst cases of autocorrect going wrong.
Oh yeah.
Like there's like one that's like, hey, will you pick up some like anal lube when they were supposed to say bananas or some shit like that, and it's just fucking hilarious because they're sending it to their parents and stuff. And oh my god.
Oh, of course, Patty. We disagree on a lot of fundamental things, and that's fine. I don't think there's nothing wrong.
I don't think anybody on these panels agrees with everybody on everything 100%.
Yeah, no,
and
of course
we shouldn't. And that's good. That's a good thing. If we didn't have disagreements, then who would? Yeah. Then
I gotta point out how this panel is like a table of family members almost. Like 20 years ago, you were able to discuss different politics and different ideas and whatnot, and they'd get up from the table. Sometimes they'd be a little angry at each other, but it wouldn't affect the fact that they're family and friends. But now you could sit down at a table and one person could talk about Trump, one person could talk about Biden, and then they get up from that table, they'll never talk again.
Potatoes are flying.
Yeah. People are uncomfortable with conversations they don't like.
For what it's worth, I do think a not insignificant amount of this has been the sort of like polarization, right? Because I remember earlier in my life when like the disagreement was over like, the Democrats and the Republicans, it was like, oh, do you like Mitt Romney or do you like Obama? And it's like, okay, the differences between these guys is I'm gonna be real, very minor.
Between who?
Like Romney and Obama.
Oh.
Sorry, they were very minor compared to today, which is like Donald Trump and like okay, my grandmother literally believes that Donald Trump is like some sort of like Messiah-like figure.
Oh, my aunt too. She posts like the Trump is Jesus Facebook memes. Like Trump is the Messiah, the savior.
It's more than the memes. I've had conversations. I've had like. And I hesitate to call them conversations because they're not really like coherent. Like it's insane. And like
Chuck is our resident Trumper, but he won't explain why. Sorry, Lib, keep going.
Who is Chuck?
Yeah, Chuck is.
Oh.
You gotta leave comments up for a little bit longer, Jeff, so we can actually read them. He's like,
we probably agree on things like the day I brought up women in the space program. I mean, I don't know, when did I bring up women in the space program? I mean, I think women should be in the space program. I think women are in the space program. They've done a lot of good. The early computers for NASA, like as in the people doing the computing, were women, like overwhelmingly.
I watched that movie too, Lib.
I saw that movie. They were black women.
Well, there was so there was a section of them that were black women, but it was predominantly just women. Computing was a woman seen as a woman's job,
or just individuals,
50s and 60s,
just scientists.
Well, they weren't considered scientists at the time, and then now they are.
You could even see them just as individuals, like not even using their gender.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
part of the reason why I love coming on here
put in that role because of their gender, so that's why.
Yeah. A lot of the reason why I do come in here versus other platforms is because I do enjoy, some of the content and the conversations that happen here. A lot of them are very reasonable. I really respect people that can hold two competing ideas in their head at the same time, and it seems like a good majority of the people that usually come on here can do that and can give credit where credit is due. Even if they disagree with the argument, they can at least understand where they're coming from, and I think that breeds a larger understanding of the diversity of people, and that just makes society even better when we can at least understand why people do things the way that they do them.
Absolutely.
So I just appreciate that about this. But I've actually got to head out. I'm starving, and I want to spend some time with my family. So
absolutely, man. There's nothing wrong with that. But thank you so much for coming on. I thoroughly enjoy every time our conversations. Every time you come on, man. You have a very unique perspective, and like you definitely bring a lot to the conversation every time you're here. So I really appreciate you.
No, I
appreciate that. I appreciate that, guys. All right, we'll see you guys later.
Okay,
later. Bye.
Yeah.
Peace. Great talking today. It was a great discussion. I feel like Steve brought a lot to the table.
You said you're going away for a few days?
Well, I'm actually driving back to America. I'm driving back to the motherland.
Do you split your time?
To the motherland.
Do I split my time? So what I do is normally I spend 3/4 of the year in America, and then I spend 1/4 down here.
For winter.
Yeah, because when we had the hotel, that's why we bought the hotel in a seasonal area, so I can continue coming down to Mexico. But there's literally nobody in town. A town of like 3,000 people was where I lived. And so during the winter, that 3,000 people turned into maybe 1,000 people or less. And so you would hardly ever see anyone other than driving to work. And then it was just lonely and cold and windy. And when you get cold and windy, you get, okay, I need to stay inside. And the not getting vitamin D and stuff, it messes with my head.
Yeah, that's fair. No, I fully I expect that'll start happening to me because I just moved over here to Seattle, and not as much
now?
Not as much sun. Well, no, I mean,
you mean from Memphis? From
Memphis, yeah. Okay. And I guess I'm not in Seattle. I'm actually over east of Seattle, but
yeah,
living in Seattle.
You've seen The Shining, right? I mean, that's pretty much what it would be like if I never left during the winter.
Oh my God, I could see it now.
God.
MoOse in his shining hotel.
Oh, God.
You could stream it.
Yeah. Did you know that video was filmed inside Yellowstone National Park?
Yes, I did, actually.
Yeah.
No, that's where the hotel is? Like the one they used?
The Shining, yeah. The hotel's there, and it's pretty freaky, but I worked at Yellowstone for 7 months in transition. And it was, even I started getting a little like cabin fever because it was way worse than Maine.
Talk about your transition story.
They were what?
Oh yeah, I said transition. I was in transition of like from job to job. Yeah, I've transitioned a few times in my life, Liv. There's no shame in it.
Yeah, there's no shame. No shame. Everyone's transitioned a little bit
too. Yes.
Exactly. Show your transition timeline. See, this is what I'm saying. All right, you can make funny trans jokes. They just have to be somewhat funny.
Well, yeah, I guess
palatable.
I'm trans too, then, as many times as I've been transitioned.
Exactly. Oh God, yeah. No, I'm ready for spring, Patty, too. I need it to be slightly warmer.
Yeah, we woke up with snow on the ground yesterday.
Oh yeah, no, it was hail. It was hail. It started as hail, and then that hail.
It was hail, or it was hell.
It was hail. I mean, it was kind of hell. It was hailing. This was because when I went to pick that person up, I on the way back it started hailing, and I was like, "Ooh, dang! I'm glad I got in, because it's like, starting to really come down." And then like I went in and was like going in. I baked some bread or something, and like 10 minutes later I like looked out my door and I was like, "Oh, it's like sticking to the ground. Like it's like there's like a 1-inch thick pile of hail on the ground. Like what the fuck?"
Yeah, we've had a few hailstorms here in Texas here the last couple of years, and like they can be like pretty scary. I mean, like really, so people talk about golf ball size hail. We get that kind of shit here sometimes, and like it's like,
oh yeah,
there's no kind of weather you can't get in Texas though. Occasionally, it won't happen a lot, but like we'll have blizzards, we'll have hail, we'll have hurricanes and tornadoes and whatever. I mean, like it's just Texas does not have any consistency. Like I mean, I've literally gone outside and under a clear sky and seen it raining in one spot on the ground. Like I mean, like Truman Show style. Like just like there's like one little circle where it's raining from like just one little cloud, and you're just like, okay, like is this real life? Like,
dudes from Texas are huge, bro. I drive through Texas on my way back to Maine, and it's like, holy shit! When you talk about corn-fed boys, like I walk into the room and I feel like I'm like a 13-year-old child.
There's women here like that. Like I was working the counter. I guess I worked the counter for the Broadway show when it's tour here, Wicked, and I worked like the merch booth, right? And like there was this one day where like these two clearly married, a man and wife, and they were like 5'6". They were like, and they had two daughters. I don't know but they're two daughters that were literally a head and shoulders taller than me. They were like giantesses. And I was just like, how did this happen? And they were like blonde hair, long blonde hair, bright blue eyes, gorgeous. I mean, they were gorgeous, but but they were kind of like frightening Amazons. I'm like, how did these?
No, I guarantee you, it was like
did they adopt them?
Two college athlete stars who were like physical specimens, like got together and were like, our kids are going to be the greatest athletes of all time.
But their parents were both like I mean, they just looked like, I mean, they were in their probably 50s or so, and they were just like they were like they were like 5'6". They were short, like they were small people. I just don't get it. Like I was like, how did it's just like, but they were like the absolute epitome of like what people think of like Texas women look like. So they look like. Did I get scare-roused? No.
Yeah. Oh no, I do. I love seeing women who are taller than me.
It
doesn't happen often because I'm 6 foot.
I've never had that. I've never had that issue. Like a woman being taller than me, it's never bothered me the slightest bit. I don't know.
Oh no, it doesn't bother me. I love it.
I know. I'm saying I've never understood that thing that where guys are like that guys don't want to date women don't want to date guys shorter than them. Guys don't want to date women that are taller than them. I don't understand that. I was like, did you?
It is a thing though. Like I've dated short people. They all have complexes about being short. With a tall person.
That's sometimes, unless they're really short. I did have a friend who was like, this guy was like really, really short, but he had all the confidence in the world, and it was all earned.
Sometimes it's Napoleon.
Sometimes it's Napoleon, but for him, it was
like it's a front. It's over like compensation.
This boy had big dick energy and a big dick.
Sometimes short people are good at faking it.
They are good at faking it, but yeah. No, actually, speaking of really, I know we're probably about to get off. I was just gonna mention I've started making bread, and
what kind?
I did a bread maker. I did it for a while,
from scratch. So like just like basic shit, like it's like powder bread and stuff. I'm gonna try and do some stuff with yeast, but it's a little more complicated.
Have you watch there's a YouTube channel, look up Brian Lagerstrom. He's he's one of the YouTube like a chef guy, but I learned all my bread making stuff from his videos, and his bread making stuff is really thorough. It teaches you all about how to like make like you can make the yeast flour combination. You leave it and let it grow for like 3 days or something like that, and you use it as like your I learned how to do all that stuff, and I love making bread. and it tastes so good, but like I can't really eat it much. I can't really eat much of it because my small stomach. So, and so it always would end up going waste. But like it was really fun to learn how to make, and it's way more difficult and way more time consuming than it ever should need to be to like make bread the right way. Like you really have to like put work into it. And it's not like work. Like the actual like part where you're dealing with the dough isn't that isn't the difficult part.
No.
It's all the waiting you have to do. You have to like you have to do this thing, and then you have to wait for like 15 minutes, and then you do another thing and you wait for 2 hours. And you do another thing and do anything that takes 5 minutes, and then you have to wait for another 3 hours. And it's just like
that's
like
why
your whole day has to center around making bread.
So I've been doing like just like powder bread, so like using what is it, baking powder, so you don't use yeast, you use baking powder instead.
That has aluminum in
it. Yes.
Okay, I didn't know that, but okay.
I stopped using it when I found that out.
I mean, there's iron in most foods.
Yeah, but aluminum is different. It's supposed to be it's supposed to be bad for your brain or something.
Isn't aluminum a neuro something?
That's something like, at least I remember in the 90s.
In certain quantities, yes, but in the quantities that would be in like a whole loaf of bread, it's not enough to.
I know. I just got paranoid. I wouldn't even wrap things in aluminum foil. I was so paranoid.
Oh God,
when you use baking soda, you use such a tiny amount. It's like you use like a pinch of baking soda. It doesn't.
You know what pisses me off? Being a
pinch,
stoner, like they put plastic liners in the cans, and man, that's just fucked up. It's fucked up. The aluminum cans, they have a plastic liner inside them now.
Oh, you can't use them as bongs anymore?
I mean, I did, but I found out the hard way that I was probably killing myself.
Oh, that's fucked up.
I didn't know that either.
But no, I've been like making bread and stuff, and oh my God, I understand humans. Like humans are just like, yes, staple crop. Like bread, rice, what's another staple crop? Corn, yeah, like
wheat.
Bread.
My neighbor down here is a huge rice grower in California. He grows sticky rice for the sushi restaurants, and he gave me 5 pounds of it. That shit is fire, dude. I love bread. I love rice.
Oh, good rice is like is I can't eat much of it, but I love rice. I love it so much.
Yeah, me too.
Liv, keep going, Liv.
Paella is great, but yeah, go on your.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I completely understand, like, early humans, like, fascination with this. Holy shit! It's literally 4 things, and I just make a loaf of bread that can feed like 4 people for like a day.
Bread, water, baking powder, salt.
Yes.
You flour. Get some curry and throw some bread in it. Boom. Get some curry, throw some rice in it. Boom.
We have a bunch of different like spices I'm gonna test out. Apparently you can like put chunks of honey in it too. I'm gonna try with that.
Dude, well, here, get yourself some Castellavano olives. They're a green olive that tastes like a mix between a black and a green olive. Chop those up, put it in the dough. That's all you have to do. Make your normal bread, and the olives give the bread like a flavor like that. It's just like it's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. Even if you don't like olives, I've given this bread to people that don't even like olives, and like they adore it. It tastes. You don't really taste the olive. It like the olive chunks are in there.
Yeah.
I mean, but they're not. But the baking takes the sourness out of it. So they're just they don't really. They just kind of taste like they're part of the bread, and it tastes like it makes the bread taste amazing. You can also do the same thing with I tell you what, if you ever make cornbread,
jalapeno cheesy bread.
I've made cornbread. Yeah. No,
cornbread.
I'm from the South. I've made cornbread.
Okay, so you know about baking grease then. You know yes. that the only true way to make cornbread is to take like one of those cheap ass mixes, mix it up, but then fry yourself like a whole pound of bacon. Take all that grease and you pour that right into the thing. Mix it up, bake that shit, and it's the best thing you've ever had.
You have to use the bacon.
Oh Lord, you're speaking my language.
You have to use it. Look, all right. It is not the only. In fact, there's a billion uses for bacon grease, but cornbread is like the best use for bacon grease.
Yeah, it's.
Hey, are you off the Highway 40, Chris?
Am I off? I'm off of I-30. I think I don't know if I-40 comes. I think I-40 is more south towards Houston. If you're coming up this way, definitely you can go through Dallas. I mean, it shouldn't make much difference to your trip. I mean,
yeah, I was gonna say I-40 only goes through the Panhandle.
It's a panhandle.
Okay.
So it goes more north then. I can't remember, but yeah.
Well,
Just
I'll talk to you when I get closer to Texas. I'll talk to you and I'll see because we have to race back to Maine because we only have 2 weeks. But yeah, either this trip or the next trip, I'll try to stop and see you. Say hi at least.
We definitely, man. We'll meet up somewhere. Like I'll show you. I'd be happy to like take you some of the cool places. There's a lot of cool places in Dallas. Like there's a lot of. I'll tell you what. We'll if you're managed to stop by here, we'll go to Rodeo Goat. And I will enlighten you on the best burgers that, in my opinion, exist.
Wait, Chris, you live in Dallas?
Yeah.
Oh shit. Okay, I used to live in Dallas. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know you lived in Dallas.
I thought we talked about it. I mean, I live in Irving technically, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
I lived in Fort Worth, which is like one of the suburbs. It's like west of Dallas. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know. Fort Worth's got some crazy good shit in it too. I mean, so the whole area is chock full of like really good food places and stuff like that.
There was a fried chicken place that was so good.
Yeah, we have a couple of those. Strangely, the thing that I find like the hardest thing to find like really amazing stuff here is like you can find a lot of good, decent Mexican food, but you can't find. I've never found a single Mexican restaurant that just like blew my socks off.
Bullshit.
In Texas?
I didn't say that it wasn't good. I just said that I haven't found any that blew my socks off. Like we had a place.
The best Tex-Mex I've had was in California, honestly.
Well, he's talking about Mexican places, not Tex-Mex.
Well, wait, you said they suck because they do suck.
I'm not saying they suck. I'm saying that I'm saying there's decent. There's tons. Okay, like just about every gas station has like a taqueria in it that you can get really good street tacos from. Okay, like I mean, there's if you like street tacos, you can find them everywhere, and they're all good. They're all good, but I've yet to find one that just like absolutely like was like my new standard. You know, like my former standard for like good Mexican food was this place we had in Texarkana of all places called Colima's, and like they didn't make Tex-Mex, they made straight up like Mexican style Mexican food, and the like they're Adababa, or is that how you say it? Adababa, like. I don't remember. I can't remember. But like,
I gotta take you down to Mexico so you can see what real Mexican food tastes like. Because California does Mexican food pretty damn close. Arizona, I don't know how it's a border state, and it absolutely is trash, like god awful.
I used to be good friends with
Arizona Mexican food.
Oh, I like.
I used to be good friends like whenever I was like 19 with a Mexican guy that was and his name is Miguel, and his family was like they were all like straight across the border kind of Mexican. They were not making Tex-Mex at all. They actually owned a little Tex-Mex restaurant, but like he would invite me to come over and have lunch with them before they opened, and like they would have real Mexican lunch, like in addition to the Tex-Mex stuff like that. It was so good, man. Like they just bring out a bowl. Okay, they bring out a bunch of tortillas of different sizes and a bowl that just had like meat and like vegetables and everything all fried up in it, and everybody just like make their tacos or whatever they wanted or burritos out of it, and like the sauces and everything they used and everything. Oh my god, it was like the best. I ate there like 4 or 5 times, and then Kalima's was the closest thing I ever found to that. It was that it's. And of course now my family is Spanish, so like from Spain, and so like I have a very I love olives. I love Mediterranean type food. I love making paella, even though I can't eat much of it. I love
paella.
Yeah, I was gonna say, growing up, I had a friend who his family was Puerto Rican, and oh my god, it's not Mexican food. It's very, very different. But it's still that sort of like in that same vein. And oh my god, it's so fucking good. I've never looked at Mexican food the same way ever again.
I worked today at Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic, and they both brought food to like the theater I worked at before for me, and it was always amazing. So
today I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken. So don't feel bad. Like Texas does like Mexican bad, but with the Tex-Mex thing, but down here, they try to copy like KFC, and it's called Kentucky.
Kentucky.
Is that in Mexico? You still in Mexico? Kentucky.
Yeah,
that's the Mexican fried chicken.
Did you ever try out the thick pancake style flour tortillas I told you about, MoOse? Or I told you about on Discord. Did you ever try those?
Sorry, I missed you right there. That Kentucky. I guess I don't like that word.
I said that I on Discord a while back, like when we first you first came on the panel. So I told you about those the Texas, I guess they're called Texas style, or they're just like really thick flour tortillas. They're flour tortillas that are more like a flatbread.
You sent me the link. Yes,
Did you
I'm
try
gonna
them?
make that shit. I haven't
Dude,
made it yet.
I am telling you.
Are you in an RV?
You will never.
Yeah, I'm cleaning it out right now because
you
we're
will
gonna
never want to eat a flat, a tiny, a thin little like flour tortilla type thing again. It will like you'll just like you'll never want them again. Like when
those handmade thick tortillas. Oh yeah, no, those fuck. They fuck.
Those like I mean they're not even hard to make. They're like 3 ingredients. You have to all you have to do is like let them rise for like 30 minutes, and then you put them into balls and you let that rise for another 30 minutes. Then you just throw them in your skillet. You take each one, flatten it out with like a rolling pin, put it in the skillet for like, and it's like 5 seconds there. Flip it 5 seconds. I'll actually spread the butter on it while they're cooking. I'll spread some butter on like each side as I'm cooking it, and then so I flip them over like twice each, just like that butter got cooked in there, and take those off, man. I tell you what, like I mean, nobody's had them. It's like has had any other reaction to it. It's like that's the best flour tortilla I've ever had. It's just like you could do anything with it. It's almost like you don't even want to make tacos out of them because like the tortillas are so good, you don't want anything else in them. You just want to eat them. I just want to eat those. I don't even care about using them for anything else.
God, now you're selling me. You should send me this link to this recipe.
It's really easy. I'll send it to you on the Discord, man.
Oh, please do. I will definitely check that out.
It's easy.
I look like a small guy, but I eat more than anybody I know. I eat like a whole large pizza. Like
every small guy I know eats like 3 times their weight per meal, and it's like what? How?
Yeah, just that metabolism shit. I always had bad metabolism.
So. I did too, but I just I fix it by like doing non-voluntary fasting every now and then, you know?
Yeah, just the ADHD fast. The ADHD fast where you forget to eat for several days. Yeah.
Yes.
Entertainment channel.
What? No, I don't. I'm not. No one should do this.
No,
by the way, no one should do it.
Unhealthy.
It's an unhealthy, bad thing that happens to ADHD people whenever we just forget to eat. It's not like it's not something I do on purpose. I just forget to eat sometimes for more than one day.
Yeah, I forget to eat all the time. In fact, I'm forgetting to eat right now. I have to go.
Oh yeah, no, same actually. You should end stream and go eat.
I didn't remember to eat this morning. When I ate a few minutes ago, that was the first time I ate all day.
Yep.
I forgot.
That's me every day.
I have not eaten today at all. I have yet to eat today.
I guess I ate some eggs this morning. That was pretty good.
I'll be right there.
And when they get a teleporter going, I'm gonna get you guys in on my teleporter thing, and you guys will come down here and you'll eat good. You'll eat great with me, and we'll eat for like $50 or whatever for all of us, and we'll just eat like a feast. We'll be like kings.
Hell yeah, bitchin'.
Yeah,
I'm down.
Totally. Yeah, I love. I can't eat that much, unfortunately. Like I said, I had the stomach sleeping thing a while back because of that's what my doctor said I needed to do. But so I can't eat a lot without like if I eat too much, I'll just end up throwing up because like my stomach can't fit it. So I don't eat a lot, but like I love cooking though. I love cooking for people. I get so much joy out of cooking for people. Like I can't even explain it. Like I love the actual process of cooking. I love the improvisational aspect of it. Like even when you're following a recipe and like I love it whenever like I'm following a recipe and like I suddenly realize I don't have something and I improvise something in the moment and it turns out better than I ever thought. Like have you ever tried just like cooking your rice in chicken broth? Like
rice and chicken broth.
Yes.
Like rice in chicken broth?
Yes. Just take a cheap thing of chicken stock from the store. Pour that into the what you're gonna use for rice. Instead of water. Replace the water with chicken broth. Or any kind of broth, actually. Any broth. It doesn't matter. You can use a broth you want. Just replace the water with broth, and the rice you don't have to season it, you don't have to do anything. The rice comes out tasting amazing, like right out the thing. And you can even add a little bacon grease in there if you like. You can do tons of things with rice that are just.
God, I love you, Chris. Bacon grease, man. I love bacon grease.
Oh yeah, bacon grease is like the best thing in the world.
Yeah, a little, but you cook it, and you can do the same thing with pasta too. Cook your pasta directly in broth, and if you want to make
instead of water, do it in broth.
Yeah, if you want to make chicken spaghetti, for example, making chicken spaghetti, instead of put a couple of like those cheap things, like $1.50 usually even at Walmart, even with the inflation prices, $1.50. Take 2 of those and pour them into your pot that you're going to use for your spaghetti. Let it boil. Put the pasta in it, cook that, and the thing is, the pasta will actually absorb way more of the broth than it would of the water. It'll absorb a lot of that flavor from the broth, and so it'll come out like already tasting good. But then you can just take that, you throw that into a skillet, you can get a can of cream of chicken soup or cream of mushroom soup or something like that. Throw in some mushrooms, and then just a couple of. I mean, I'm talking about like a cheap. This is like bachelor type way to do it, but it tastes gourmet once you're done with it. And you take a can of a couple of cans of that canned chicken, drain it, pour that in there, stir it all around, and then if you really want to, you don't even have to go with this far, but then you can take that whole skillet, as long as you have one that's oven safe, cover that with any kind of cheese you want to put on top, put that in there and let it bake for 10 minutes, and you'll have enough food first of all to feed 20 people, and depending on how much pasta you make, and it's amazing. It'll blow your socks off, I promise you.
I'll have to check that out.
Fun fact again, if you've ever eaten those Hello Freshes or anything like that, they come with a little broth packet. It's a concentrated broth. And so if you have just a little room, like you're in the RV or something and you're traveling, or you just don't have a lot of cupboard space, you can get them in little packets. And so you could just drop the concentrate packet in with the water.
Yeah,
mix it up real fast, and then boom, same exact thing Chris is talking about.
A spoonful of better than bouillon will do it too. If you get the better than bouillon liquid stuff, a spoonful of that in the water, if you stir that around, it'll do the same thing. Yeah. So I mean, I tell you, just pasta and rice with that one little hack changes. It's just it's the difference between making plain macaroni and cheese. It's that degree of difference. And it takes
it's amazing.
Even less trouble that.
For everybody who thought that this channel was only about transgenders and gays and drag queens, stuff like that, we're also about food here.
Yeah. Let's go. It's the glue that holds us all together. Is our love of food.
Everybody can eat. Yep. Everybody eats. You have to. It's part of life.
And food. The role of food in community building. If you know how to work food right, you will get a community going.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things I'll give Baptist credit for. Right? They know how to make a fucking potluck happen.
Oh yeah.
Right? These are the best fucking potlucks. Look, I will. In fact, it's making me consider. I might just try and see if I can find a Baptist church around here, just so I can sneak into some of their potlucks. I'm not kidding.
Though, in my parents' church and stuff like that, they don't even really do potlucks much anymore and stuff like that. And I think it's sad that that's kind of disappeared somewhat from church culture too. And I
think a lot of that's just because churches have sort of declined pretty significantly. Because young people my age aren't going to fucking.
No, Lib. What it is people aren't contributing to the church no more. So if I'm going to pass around the collection plate, and if you guys have a little extra, please hand that off to Gen X Jeff and Chris. We'd like to thank you. We all thank you for being here today. Your time, energy, and attention. Right. We love that, and we need you to like, share, and subscribe. Don't be one of those thumb downers. Be a thumb upper.
Hell yeah. All right, here's what we'll do, Jeff. Here we'll try and begin and end every segment with a foodie thing. That way it'll help with the monetization algorithm. All right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, whatever works. We gotta get 200 something more viewers to get to monetization.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. I was gonna say that
I've gotten 3 people monetized. Sorry, Chris, I'm a dick.
Oh, you did?
No, you're not a dick.
What do you do? Are they? Because we also want to do it organically, where it's actual people that show up and participate.
Yeah, of course.
So
okay
it has to do with advertising and stuff. You have to go out and advertise your channel and stuff.
I kind of like how it's growing on its own, just drawing this quirky little audience that it is.
Well, Yeti Life, all I can say is just rewind a little bit earlier in the video once we're wrap up. Just go back about 10 minutes and it'll all be there. But basically, this trick is just use chicken bouillon or chicken stock
instead of water. Yeah,
instead of water. Just either add some better than bouillon to the water, or some of the papered the concentrated bouillon to the water, or use actual chicken stock to make your pasta rice and that's the whole trick. So.
Yep. Pretty simple trick, but Anyways, I need to go and make food. So
yeah,
thank you for being here.
Before you leave, Lib, I want to say that you're one of my favorites. You are my favorite transsexual. I will say that. And
well, I am a transgender, not a transsexual, but I
sorry.
nonetheless.
See, you know what? You correct me, and it doesn't bother me. It makes me feel good about being correct.
You said gender didn't exist, though, so how can you be transgendered? So
gender exists in the same way that race exists.
Yeah, and we all agree that doesn't exist today.
Well, no, it does. It just isn't what people think it is.
So then if somebody tells me like they're black and they don't appear, I can just ignore it.
Just I mean, probably
your gender,
probably, yeah. Gender. Yeah, unless like, I mean, I guess if someone was like half black and they were just a little light skinned, I feel like it would be kind of a dick to be like, no, you're not black, because like they probably got told, no, you're not white or whatever their entire life.
You know when you're black enough.
I get told a bunch of bad things in life. People hate me on the metaverse all the time, Lib. But don't forget, when you leave, Lib, just understand, Lib, that I have a deep fondness for you, Jeff and Chris, and I've grown to have a lot of love for you, Libby.
Thank you. I appreciate it a lot, actually, very much so. Thank you, MoOse. That does mean
try to interfere in the world.
All right. Well, anyway, guys, it's been a great conversation today. I really thanks again to if he's still out there, Steve, for coming by, and like I think he contributed a lot of great things to conversation. And anyway, so I guess Lib dropped off already, but anyway, guys.
Yep.
Good night.
And tonight is Survivor. We will be watching in the Discord. I'm on the West Coast, so I can't start streaming it until 8 p.m. my time, which is 10 p.m. Central. So if there's anybody on the East Coast that has the ability to stream it earlier, you're welcome to do that. In fact, we would be very excited about that. But anyway, there'll be Survivor tonight in the Discord. It's the new season, so it's the premiere.
So it's real Survivor. It's not panel Survivor.
Yeah, panel Survivor. Panel Survivor is dead in the water until people are actually interested in it. So.
Okay. All right. I just had to be clear because that's why I was so sad.
We're still trying to recruit for panel Survivor. That's going to be a process. But if you are interested in like participating in a streaming version of Survivor, email Chris. The address is under his name.
Yep.
So that's what's happening today, and we'll be back tomorrow.
All right, I'll get out of here. You guys close it out. It's your show.
Oh, I mean,
you're going to Maine. You drive. Oh, he left. Well, have a safe trip. And that sounds far, but yeah, we'll see you. Check in with us when you can, and safe journeys.
Yes. You guys have a great day. Bye.
Thank you all as usual, and we'll be here tomorrow. Let me see how long it takes the music to get started. Damn, that's a road trip. Okay, well, I hope it's a safe one, and we'll see you at some point. Take care, everyone. Happy Survivor Day. Go. Woo.